People are talking about it.
Yeah. I think they get excited what's the fee gonna be for the basket. District that would be talking about the first time.
Got it. You want the broken restrooms?
Just put that.
Would you like to broken out instead?
But
You can play.
How are you? I'll keep the squeaks to a minimum. Okay.
100%.
Yeah. So I
Right.
All
right.
We're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we will start off with the roll call. I'll go. I am Yvette Temple.
Jim, I agree.
Haley Ortega. Stephanie Retzloff.
Karen Nidaker. Sherry Wilkins. Wendy Goodwin.
Lauren Howard.
Rachel Murata.
Mark Brown.
And then we have our staff here today. So is there anyone that would like to read the land acknowledgement? Oh, sorry.
Kathy Cook.
Oh.
Did you hear me? Kathy Cook.
John Hagwood.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'd be happy to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you.
Recognizing that it is Native American Heritage Month, by the way, it's even more important. The Parks Improvement Funding Workgroup meets on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of the land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that the community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854.
Thank you so much, Mark. Now make it a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Seconded. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. And then also may I get a motion to approve the November 4th, 2024 meeting minutes? Okay. I'll make a motion. Okay, Sherry, thank you. And I'll second. Thank you, Rachel. All in favor, say aye. Okay. Any opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you. So we do not have any public comments. We are going to go down to Jen Burbidge, the director, and do a work group recap.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. And we are back with our work group recap. Thank you all again so much for being involved with this group and being willing to serve. As you know, this is to make sure we're all on the same page and just see if there's any questions outstanding before we move forward. Before we get into it, we need to talk about this work group's schedule. So your next meeting should be December 2nd, since that's 2 weeks from now. The intent, and I'll circle back to the intent because we're having some interesting challenges with December 2nd. So before you write anything down, the intent is staff would present a draft recommendation that comes out of tonight for you all to carefully review and then come back to the next meeting with the intent to approve a final recommendation. So interesting challenges for December 2nd. It's our Lacey Holiday Lights event over at Huntsville Park from 5:30 to 7:30. Several of us, like to go to that event. It's a pretty significant event for our department. In addition, the timing of the Thanksgiving holiday season that'll happen between now and then is, challenging just because we want to make sure staff has enough time to prepare that draft recommendation for you all and for you all to have enough time to review. And so we'd like to set your next meeting for December 9th instead. And like I said, the intent would be approving a final recommendation, and that would be the last meeting, but we can also reserve December 16th in case the group is not able to come to a consensus and has more questions and wants to talk it through more.
So I got lost
Thoughts?
along that pathway.
Okay.
So instead of meeting on the 2nd, we would meet on the,
9th.
and then we would have one final meeting on the 16th.
So the intent would be to finish up on the 9th, but we would have you hold the 16th, just in case. the group isn't able to come to consensus and needs to talk things through a little bit more.
And are you looking for us to check our calendars or?
Yeah, and we definitely,
You need to go to the tree lighting or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
It's not a parade, it's not a parade.
we'll be lighting the tree. It's a
Holiday
holiday lights,
lights.
Lacey holiday light.
Yes.
Did we have,
It's a real-
did we have the 16th originally on the schedule?
No,
Oh, because I'm on an airplane going to Utah that day. But the 9th, hope everybody works for me. I would not be available on the 16th.
okay.
And hopefully we can come to an agreement.
Yeah,
You need a motion for that.
We don't need a motion, just kind of looking for that thumbs up if people's calendars work.
yeah.
So move the 2nd to the 19th. or
Yes,
the-
so no meeting on the 2nd.
The ninth.
And so the next meeting would be 3 weeks from tonight, which is December 9th. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
This is Kathy. I will not be available on the 9th or the 16th. We leave, actually I delayed our leaving, but we leave the 4th for, we camp in Boondock, but we're going down to Arizona and South Texas for the winter. So I can see if we can join remotely, but otherwise I'm not able to attend.
Thanks, Kathy.
Is Kathy a voting member?
Yeah, and how many,
She is.
yeah, so how many voting members would we have in attendance for, because we'll need a quorum on the night. The voting members are the most important.
Yep, it's just Kathy, right, that had a conflict, so there would be a quorum. And it sounds like she would try it too. Let's see, let's get into the recap then.
All late at 5.
So our recap is, oh, did you have a question, Mark?
No, he's talking
Oh,
to
no.
himself.
just-
Okay.
He's talking to himself, but that's okay.
I might be able to join on the 16th, but probably not any time before, like around, airplane doesn't get into to Salt Lake until 5, so.
Hopefully we'll be done by then.
Yeah, yeah.
We all just have to agree on the night.
Yes.
And then stay here until you agree, right?
Congress is in session.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Okay,
Out of control.
So we're gonna circle back.
okay, so, yeah, so what we really wanna do, oh, it looks like Brooklyn joined us.
So were they famous? So we'll
Great.
match up.
Carter probably already-
I think so.
Okay.
Hi, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Great, so,
Phoenix.
yeah, so our recap is gonna be, less information about some of the past meetings and more focused on just recently what we've been doing. So we wanted to confirm the work group's intent out of last week. And so what we heard is that the group would like us to pursue the Metropolitan Park District funding with continued commitment of general revenue from City Council. That staff continue to pursue grants, donations, sponsorships, state and federal legislature requests to supplement funding, to potentially reassign some committed reserves, and I'm gonna be passing it over to Troy here to talk about that here momentarily. And then if funding a project, also understanding that the maintenance and operation for that project needs to get funded as well.
I would like to offer one amendment to that for consideration. Instead of saying with continued commitment of general revenue, strike the word general and insert additional revenue. Because, for example, we talked about the possibility of our recommendation, including asking for a bigger slice of the lodging tax. And so it's not just general revenue or general fund revenue, but more broadly additional revenue. Just something to think about.
And we'll come back to this, so that's good initial thoughts. Thanks.
Okay, this is.
Yeah, that works too. Yep, we'll have Troy talk about this one. Thank
Okay,
you.
wanted to provide just a little bit of an update to the work group about our reserves and specifically what our city council has identified in terms of reserves. So the list here is very similar to what you've seen in the past. I think one difference is about the fourth from the bottom, the rack sports complex life cycle replacements. That's one we just missed in terms of presenting to this work group, so have an additional 447,000. But at the same time, both of those rack reserves you're seeing there, the third and fourth from the bottom, those are funded from the public facility district, so they must go to the rack. They don't have to go to those projects, but they have to stay within the rack. So in total, the reserves that the council has identified for park purposes is about 4.4 million. Again, there are some restricted, what we would call restricted reserves, but 4.4 altogether in terms of what has actually been committed by the council. It's what we report on our financial statements, and it's what we use as a budgeting tool. So we had a lot of discussion about funding the gap and where do these actually fall in terms of being applied to actual projects on the list that you're considering. So we took a look at the reserves and looked at very specific reserves as they pertain to the project list that you are considering. I know the numbers here are pretty small. So we identified about 545,000 that so far is dedicated to the museum project. 350,000 for the Virgil Clarkson Senior Center, and about 2.2 million for rack field replacement. I do recognize that the 2.2 is higher than the 496,000 on this list. And the reason for that is the 2.2 is for all of the synthetic fields. These are only just a couple of the fields here on the project list in the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. So the capital improvement plan only spans about a 6-year period, whereas we're looking out 10, 12 years in terms of that reserve. So certainly recognize that that is higher than what you have in your plan. So when you add these three sources or these three reserves, it's about 3.1 million. So there's about 1.35 or so in terms of reserves that were from this previous list that don't exactly match up to the project list. So again, 1.35 million.
Thanks, Troy. And so you'll recognize this slide, but we've made a few updates. I'll start at the top here. We know that the operating expenses and the revenues of what our Parks Culture Recreation system is looking like. And so it's, that 10.1 to operate, and then with the revenues from the fees and programs coming in around 1.6 million annually. And so you can obviously see that the revenue doesn't cover the expenses. So you see the first gap here on the slide is the 8.5 million annually. And we have talked about this. We know that park systems are typically subsidized by municipalities. So while we're not overly alarmed that there is a gap, we definitely know that at this rate moving forward, there will continue to be more and more of a significant challenge keeping up with existing service levels. And then moving on to the PCIP, which we spent a lot of time learning about and evaluating. We have updated that total for the projects we're asking the work group to prioritize. So the total before had included some of those things that we pulled off of this work group's work, such as the RAC Phase 3, because that already had funding identified. So these are the correct numbers for your total. And so that's the
Could you,
just under $57 million total that you see here for the PCIP. So that includes the new capital projects along with the replacement. Did you have a question?
no, finish, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. We've also updated with that reserve amount that Troy was just talking about. So if you take this amount minus the reserves amount, that gives us the PCIP gap of just under $54 million. And so we're back to the question, well, first of all, I'll finish this whole slide. You recognize this note. It's been on this slide every single time, just that the fact that, there's on the horizon, there's definitely deferred maintenance, and then there's also just around the corner, as Jamie had pointed out early on in his presentation, that there's, a lot of playground replacements coming up around the bend. And so the big question is, how do we define the funding gap, right? So basically the answer is to take the current projects gap of this 53.8 million and then understand that there will be ongoing operational needs moving forward. So,
Sure. So my question is just a reminder. When you talk about operating revenues, those are earned revenues. Those are fees people pay, those kinds of things, correct? And none of that would be, okay, then under.
well, and sorry, let me specify. So it does include, it's fees, but it's also sponsorships and donations. So it's all of the revenues that we're bringing in within a year.
And then for us to understand, our objective is to fill the gap on a sustaining long-term basis. Am I correct in recalling that reserves action by the city council, that's not certain? There are some years in which the city didn't have the capacity to do any reserves for us or others. Because isn't the reserve some kind of a function of end of year unexpended resources? But the point is, that's not something that we can count on year after year at any predictable level. Is that correct?
To an extent. So we take the practice of identifying those year-end savings that you were referring to, and we apply those to one-time projects. So that's why you see things like field replacement. We view that as a one-time expenditure. That way we're not funding ongoing expenditures with these one-time revenues. So when you look at this slide, draw an imaginary line there between expenditures and the Parks Capital Improvement Program. So we really view those as two separate things. So in terms of this committee's task is really look at those projects that are in the capital improvement program and prioritize those and to hopefully identify funding for those. So while we're concerned about that gap in the operating side, it is currently funded with general fund revenues. So for the time being, that is how we're operating. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of long-term, depending on what the economy does and all of our other, competing priorities like police and transportation and other infrastructure, those are things that we definitely want flexibility. But really, in terms of this work group, we're looking for recommendations on the capital improvement.
So let me ask my question another way. What has been the average annual contribution towards capital projects from reserves?
It's been higher as of the last 4 or 5 years. We've added 2, 3, 4 million a year, depending on the year. We didn't expect during the pandemic we would actually add to reserves, but that is precisely what happened. This year, we are expecting to spend down reserves. We're spending about 20% of our reserves on basically 2 different projects. One is the phase 1A of Cuyo Park, as well as the police station construction. You can see how here in the parking lot. So we are indeed spending down our reserves this year.
Thanks, Troy.
I know this isn't what we're looking for, but to me, it's really important that whatever we do put in, that it is maintained. And I understand maintenance is public works, not this side of it, this side of things, but it doesn't make sense to me to just have it wasted if public works wasn't funding maintenance of whatever it is we're doing. So I'm a little confused how that works.
Sure. No, you make a great point. We too would like to fund maintenance and be mindful of that. So you'll see in the next slide deck, we'll kind of talk about a little bit, but yes, we absolutely want to consider maintenance and operations especially for future projects. We don't want to build something that we can't take care of. Right. So we definitely want to think about that. We do want flexibility in terms of our maintenance and operations. Like I said, the current state is we're funding that. And I think Jamie would argue that we're underfunding, which I would agree as well. So we would like to build in that flexibility too, looking long-term, because we want to sustain all of this if we can. So yeah, your point is well taken.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to think about it. Don't think of it as parks and public works being separate. Just think of it as our Lacey Parks system. So yes, the maintenance is housed in the Public Works Department, but it's together, we make up the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation System, so. We have these 2 slides that you're very familiar with now, the new capital projects for the PCIP and the replacement capital projects. So just want to see if there's any questions about the projects themselves that are still outstanding at this point.
So could you go back to the first one too?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
This
then
one?
the annual. The annual maintenance and operation.
Yes, in the far column, good question. Yes, that is the annual M&O.
So, I know the 5 million is a placeholder, just placeholder up there. But it's a different color, so it's not. Help me with that, the potential partnership.
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. So the reason it's in a different color is because it's not going to fund the entire pool. Could fund the entire indoor playground, depending on the size of it. So that's a great question. So that is the amount that the city could contribute to the Young Child and Family Center project itself.
Yeah.
And
To start with, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because it might not do the pool, but it would do the spray park and indoor play area, some of it. Yeah.
Yep, and the point there being that some of the top themes that the public, is interested are included in that project. And it's also just the amount of different stakeholders at the table in the community.
Right.
Our comprehensive plan outlines a lot of different projects. It also talks about how important partnerships are in the community to leverage. It's the same kids, same families in our community that the school district serves and the city serves. But that's why it's in a different color. Any other questions on this one? And then these are the replacement capital projects. Any outstanding questions? Okay, and if you think of one, please let us know. It's just part of a recap. And then circling back to what we started with here is just confirming the intent of this group to pursue the MPD or Metropolitan Park District with continued commitment of general or additional, whatever the group comes up with for their draft recommendation to the council. And then, of course, staff continuing to pursue all those extra sources of funding as we, possibly can to make the dollars go farther. Supplement funding, potentially reassign some of the committed reserves that can be, as Troy had pointed out, the ones that are flexible and which ones aren't. And then considering M&O must be funded as well. So does that track with what the group's intent is? And let's see, I heard you Mark brought something up about LTAC.
About what?
LTAC and including
Changing from general
Potentially,
fund to that first bullet from general revenue.
Yeah, I think that.
so that it would open the door for maybe conversations. Is there anything that the work group wants to add in a different bullet point about that? Or do you think it's captured well enough in that?
Feels like it's full for mine. It's pretty, well.
What I would like that to say in some fashion or form is that with the park district comes a continued commitment from the city council to sustainable, ongoing additional revenues. This doesn't let the city council off the hook in terms of continuing to do what they've done, which is to provide general support and reserve support. I just would like a powerful statement about that.
But is that continued commitment?
Yeah, the second bullet point.
Well, that's staff continuing to pursue grants. I'm talking about the city council.
The top one is general revenue from city council, continued commitment of general revenue from city council. Is that the one you're talking about, Mark?
Yeah, just like to beef that up just a little bit, but that's just me. I'd like to, sort of get an ironclad understanding that not just a continued commitment, we want sustainable, ongoing, additional revenue support.
So this is just gonna be our recommendation though. They can choose to.
Sure.
Yeah,
No.
I guess what I was asking is if you wanted to pull like LTAC out as a separate bullet, just like we did with grants and donations, or if you think that's included in additional revenue. Okay, good enough.
We talked about this early on, but some of the fees that we charge, and if we're gonna be doing some additional things with the senior center and RAC and the early learning child, could we talk about, I know that's not a lot of money, but it is some sort of continuous revenue. These are some really great facilities, and I don't know, is that anything that it's just, the money's too small, it's not worth, you know, being more realistic? I think you mentioned that the fees were competitive, but I wonder, some of these are private facilities, like fields can be private facilities. How are they running with? Is it?
In the schools.
Well, we have our own fields and then the district fields, which are a lot less expensive, more accessible for people. But I think what you're getting at is maybe some wording to review fees, ensure competitive pricing, which I mean, we do. It could be one of those continue to, you know, if that's something that the group wanted to add in.
As the fields get better or more, I think, you know, there's gonna be a desired location in any of these other facilities, and I'd love to see us make sure we're getting a reasonable amount, because I'm thinking if these were privately owned, how in the world would they ever be able to operate them? Like when it was like Bucknell, was that all just, how did they operate those?
If the pricing goes up though, that would allocate more access to clubs and select utilizers who have much greater funding capacity. And it would alienate all of the recreational and lower funded clubs, teams, et cetera. Like, I agree that some fees or increasing fees is a great way. And I think it is imperative to Lacey to be really committed to making sure that players of all levels and all funding streams have access to the good fields.
I love that, and I think, you know, could we offer some scholarships, maybe have these well-funded groups and we do scholarships for certain underfunded? I think it is worthy of exploring if there's something. So
I think we wanna kind of circle back though to our mission and intent of this actual work group, and that's to do long-term sustainable funding. And I don't know, because I'm most certainly not an expert on this, but I think that what you're talking about is reassessing fees. Wouldn't that fall under your department?
Yeah, and our Parks
anyways?
Board too, Parks Culture
Yeah,
Recreation Board, yeah.
I'm not by any means as sophisticated as you guys are on the park stuff, but I think ultimately what we're looking for is to come to a consensus of you know, something like this, and that's why they've kind of broken it down in various bullet points. And then if this is like, okay, yes, we agree at the end of this, then they're gonna put something together to bring back to us that we would say, yes, we think this is great to put to city council. But I don't know if anyone else has any other.
So they just need to do their job.
Yes, we need to do our job, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we assess our fees every couple of years and bring it before the Parks Board. And
I
it
just
is that
think it was
delicate.
worthy of like a bullet or something, but that was all. So if nobody else agrees, that's fine. So.
Thank you. All right, so tonight we'll be taking a deeper look into funding options and how they relate to the projects on the PCIP. We'll be diving into, you know, this group's recommendation, and Troy will be presenting a lot of more information tonight and things to consider. So, any other questions before we jump into that? All right. Thank you.
Just getting the PowerPoint started. I have about 6 or 7 slides here for background information, but really that's all an introduction to a tool that we developed in the finance department that I think will get at a lot of your questions in terms of M&O, the impact on a typical house in Lacey, especially when you talk about the property tax for Metropolitan Park District. You know, we obviously want to be sensitive to that impact. So I think it'll give you a wide variety, actually all the variety in the world in terms of what you want to see in scenarios. I think it could be a tool that you could use as you get into your discussions about the specific projects. as you prioritize those, you may think we need more money, less money, and we could certainly use that tool and you could get an instant idea of what that will generate and what impact it might have on a typical home. So again, this is all moving towards that tool. I think these are things that we've heard throughout your meetings. I hope we captured a lot of your conversation. We've talked about, you know, the support for public support for taxes. We talked a little bit about strategy and what that means if we had to go to the voters for an ask and the sensitivities there. And we've talked about the tax rate, very specific about how that might impact a homeowner here in Lacey, as well as the amount of revenue it might generate overall. There's obviously the higher the rate, the more revenue, but there's obviously a balancing act that we need to take into consideration. We've had the maintenance and operation conversation a little bit already, but clearly that's a consideration as you move forward in terms of trying to determine what funding sources and how much might be feasible. And then something we haven't talked about as much is the debt issuance. We offered that as an option, more in terms of the voter approved levy rate. But I think there's an option there if you're looking at the Metropolitan Park District to issue some debt and use some of those revenues to kind of jumpstart projects. So I think the model will help you kind of navigate that as well. So what we have here is a debt issuance versus pay as you go. So in focusing on the Metropolitan Park District, you've seen this slide. It's probably been about 6 weeks or so, but these are just 3 scenarios. The statutory limit for Metropolitan Park District in terms of property tax levy is 75 cents per thousand. So really anything between 0 and 75 cents is at your fingertips in terms of what you might want to consider. So for every 25 cents of assessed valuation compared to Lacey's assessed value, it's about 3.3 million. So 50 cents would be double that, 6.6, and 3 times that going up to 75 cents would be 9.9 million. So quite a bit of range in terms of what the possibilities may be. We have talked a lot about the impacts on a typical homeowner. In Lacey for 2024, an average house was about 500,000. So really taking at those same scenarios, 25 cents per thousand, 50 cents, and 75 cents per thousand, applying that to what a $500,000 home may pay on an annual basis. It's $125 for every, on an annual basis for every 25 cents of assessed valuation. So in this scenario, it's anywhere between 125 and 375 per home in Lacey. I wanted to provide a little bit of perspective. You have our 2 neighbors here in Thurston County, Tumwater, Olympia. They both have Metropolitan Park Districts. This chart here represents the 2024 levy rates. You can see Lacey does not have a Metro Park District levy, but does levy a general levy that is about 72.5 cents per thousand currently. Olympia levies just over 50 cents per thousand for their Metro Park District. Their general levy is $1.90. Tumwater is about 33 cents for their Metro Park District and about $1.86 for their general levy. So quite a bit of difference. I don't put this up here to make us look good. We are very different cities. We offer different levels of service. As an example, Olympia and Tumwater both have fire districts, fire departments. We do not. So we do not have to fund fire. So we all have very different services that we're providing, which obviously is reflected in the different.
We're paying for it somewhere, but not through city.
You're-
Yeah.
Yeah, here in Lacey, we pay the fire district directly,
Yeah.
so.
Look at it on the tax too.
Did want to talk a little bit about the legal capacity. I don't want to go too far into the weeds on this, but we do have limits for property tax in state law. The simplest way to look at it is if you look at the statutory maximum column there of $6.15. If these 5 districts levied the absolute maximum they could, one of us or all of us would have to reduce our rate. So that's $6.15. You see that there is a state law that says that can't be above $5.90. So there are formulas that I can't explain, but it's called proration. It's typically the junior taxing districts, which would be the Metropolitan Park District, the Library District. They're usually the first to have to reduce their levy rates if we do exceed 590. Again, I can't quite explain the
Which
formula.
ones did you say?
The first two on this list would be the Metro Park District and the
Okay.
library.
Okay.
The fire district is another level up before they have to be lowered, and basically the county and city wouldn't ever have to lower its rate. You can see in the 2024 column, we're nowhere near that 590 limit. So at this point, it is not a concern, but I just, want the work group to be aware of that. So you can see in yellow, that's really what I consider the capacity. I look at what we control in terms of the rate, which is the Lacey portion. We have a little over 87 cents per thousand in capacity, and we can't go above 75 cents. So we currently have capacity to go to all the way to the top of the statutory maximum on Metro Park District. So I want to talk a little bit about things you might consider as you get along in your conversations about capital replacement and M&O. I think it's a bit of a balancing act. We've already talked about some of these. Should we be looking at new revenues and preserving a share of those for maintenance, whether that be the gap, you saw the $8.5 million gap. Do we want to look to the future? Do we want to remain flexible in case the city's overall finances start to decline? Do we want to identify funding for new projects? If you looked at the museum project as an example, that had an operating budget, annual budget of over $1 million. So it doesn't make sense to build a museum if we couldn't actually afford to operate it. So that's really what this first bullet is talking about. Another one is that debt service option. Should the recommendation include a recommendation and a portion of your revenues be used for debt? That would kind of jumpstart the cash flow. We don't want this work group to be really kind of tied into a much smaller amount if you look at pay as you go. If you go that route, you wouldn't be able to build a museum. You wouldn't be able to do the next phase of Great Cuyo Park. Those amounts are quite large, and we would have to basically do nothing for a 2 or 3 year period to build up those reserves to do that project. So if you, in terms of your priorities and your recommendation to council, feel that one of those larger projects is the top priority, it may be worth those interest costs in terms to get those projects going as soon as possible.
Do we make that recommendation to them?
It could
Would
be.
that, okay, could be included in it?
And then the other I kind of touched on already. It's really the difference between, a pay-as-you-go methodology or jump-starting the cash flow in terms of debt. It isn't an all or nothing. You could split that up. You could do 1/3, 1/3. I mean, there's a lot of different options. I mean, I think there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what this work group might consider, but there's even looking at all the replacement capital projects and putting that into maintenance and reserving an overall percentage for maintenance that could go towards those projects as staff prioritizes those. And those things change too. In a lot of cases, we've had to wait till something fails before we find the funding, and that would help with that issue. And we have a bridge right now in Woodland Creek Community Park. The bridge is to the point of us not being able to drive equipment over. So we took a look at that this year and we found funding and reserves for that. But having that flexibility would allow staff to address those as those occurred as well. So, you could look at replacement capital as something entirely different as well.
I have a question. This is Kathy. Regarding debt issuance, do you have we were not able to what we call deficit spend. And so all of our base operation funding had to be there. We could, go for new money for a capital project. We had to attach money to it, but would you be able to use, go after, a debt issuance to be able to cover base operating costs?
Not for maintenance and operations, no.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
And that's why the Metropolitan Park District, I think that's why the work group ended up landing there as a viable option for basically anything on the list. It's the most flexible. Certainly for operations, that would be applicable for operations, but you could basically split that money and issue debt as well. The Metropolitan Park District is an entity that is allowed to issue debt.
Thank you.
In terms of, as you think about pay as you go or issue debt, there are a lot of things to consider. This certainly isn't a list that's supposed to be exhaustive by any means. But these were kind of the considerations that rose to the top for me as I looked at these. So cost is an issue. If you pay as you go, there's less cost. We're not paying interest. You know, I think in our personal lives, we'd all like to pay for our house and our car without having to get a loan, but that's just not a reality for most people. But there is a cost associated with that interest, and that's really the difference. Not only are you paying for the project or the asset, you're also paying interest on top of that. And in fact, in today's market, for every $1 million you spend, borrow, it's going to cost $600,000 over the 20-year life of that debt. $600,000 for every $1 million in interest. So it's a significant cost. The timing.
Oh, Rachel.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just on the cost component, isn't there sort of another factor going the other way? If we end up having to delay projects because we're doing pay as you go, they're likely to be more expensive.
It could be.
And that could even out.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, inflation.
How many projects do we have to, delay in 2020 and then it was twice as expensive as we planned?
Yeah, and that's a great point. The construction index is growing much faster than inflation. So, I think here recently, the city at least has experienced about 10% a year in construction costs. The project costs will double every 7 years at 10%. So yeah, certainly consideration.
Troy, could I ask on the issuing debt under a Metropolitan Park District with the potential for proration and the loss of long-term revenues, how does that affect the bond rating for bonds that are specifically financed in whole or in part through that funding mechanism?
It does become a little more expensive. So a Metropolitan Park District isn't going to have the same credit as a city. So
higher interest rates.
Yeah, so to your point, if the district issues a debt, it's going to be reliant just on that property tax. For the city, it is every single revenue source that the city has that is applied to that. So there's more options, there's more taxing avenues in which to pay that debt. So it's definitely going to be more expensive for a district issued debt than it is the city. In terms of timing, like I mentioned earlier, if we have to wait to have the cash in hand before we start a project, that's definitely going to delay project starts. If we issue debt, we'll have the money in hand and could start immediately. In terms of flexibility, Mark, I think you kind of touched on this a little bit with your question. If you think long term with a debt issue, there's less flexibility because you're always obligated to pay that debt. So if revenues drop, that just means the debt is going to take a bigger portion of revenues, which means there's going to be less that we could do with those annual revenues. So long term, there's less flexibility because we're going to pay debt first before we do anything else. In terms of staff capacity, I don't want to make it sound like we could issue debt for 56 million and turn around and complete all those projects. Even if we had all that money, I don't think there's any way we could build $56 million of projects in a 6-year period. I would love to say that we could, but I don't think that's even possible. So I do want to, put that on the table to make sure that, when you look at these projects, are often 2, 3, 4-year projects, and all the money enrolled will make that go faster. Is really my point. So, and there are other things. There's definitely interest risk, depending on when you issue the debt. So there's a lot of other things to consider, but I think these are kind of the bigger issues in terms of debt. Do want to show you what we could, scenarios in terms of how much we would borrow versus how much that would cost on an annual basis. And this is all under the same terms of 20-year repayment period and a 5% interest rate. So for every 10 million borrowed, we would have an annual payment of 800,000. And again, that's, if you look at the 20 million, that's a kind of better illustration of the point I made earlier. 20 million would be 1 million per year for 20 years to pay back the principal, but it would be a total 1.6 million, so 600,000 per million borrowed, we'd be paying in interest. So over the course of that 20 years, that $20 million would actually cost us 32 million by the time we paid it all back.
Oh, that's chunk change to you.
But, you know, there are those considerations, like the construction costs and about actually getting projects completed in a timely
Exactly.
manner. So you're really going to have to balance that in terms of recommendations. So in terms of scenarios, you know, we could look at that model that we built, if you just want to kind of get an idea of what that looks like. So as you get into your priority discussion and how much money you think we might need to fund that or those top priorities, I could certainly walk you through that really quickly just so you could see. Like I said, I think it'll be a tool that you could use throughout your discussions in terms of as you change those priorities, as you see those dollar amounts actually line up on a piece of paper, that could, you know, help kind of guide your conversation. So any questions about anything I covered, or do you want to jump into the little model that we built? Completely up to the work group.
I would love to do a model. Is it a walk? Just like a runway?
Yeah, well, it's an Excel. Probably not. Okay, so this first tab here is really, we take any levy amount that you might have in mind for the Metropolitan Park District. It will generate the amount of revenues that we'll actually receive on an annual basis and will actually show the impact on an average house in Lacey. And on this side here, I wanted to give you just a little bit of perspective in terms of what we think an average home in Lacey will pay next year on property tax. So this is the general levy. It's the levy the city levies to pay for streets, police, parks, all of those types of services. So we're projecting next year that an average house will pay $351 in all of 2025 for just the Lacey portion of property tax. So we've used 50%.
So is that what increase is that from this year?
It's about $9.
Oh, yeah.
So it's about
Yeah.
$342
About the same.
this year. Yeah.
Do we anticipate that levy changing at all? Are we gonna have competing levy changes if we make a recommendation?
No, we are actually going to hopefully have our council adopt this rate tomorrow night. So that will not, the levy rate itself may change because the levy rate is actually, it's calculated by the county after the first of the year. So we actually don't know the levy rate. We set the total amount collected, but it's not gonna be too far away from that. I don't think we've been off more than a penny in the 15 years I've been here. So it's gonna be right there at 70 cents. So again, total general levy for the city next year, $351 for an average house.
And
So-
that we already pay? Or is that?
Yep, that is existing. So under this scenario, if we use 50 cents per thousand as a potential Metropolitan Park District levy, it'll generate $6.6 million per year. The impact it will have on an average house in Lacey will be $250 per year. If you looked at those as one and the same, that's about a 71% increase to property tax. Yeah,
$600.
right. So as you think about this going forward in terms of revenues you want to generate, at any moment we could change that. We could go 25 cents. Of course, that would be half, so we would generate 3.3 million. The average impact for a Lacey homeowner would be 125 per month. It'd be about a 36% increase.
I have a question. So do we know the total tax burden for a $500,000 house, including county and state, all of the taxes that folks pay? I know this makes sense from the city's perspective, but from the homeowner, it would be more helpful for me to know the percentage increase compared to the total.
Yeah, it's in the 4,500 range per year.
Okay.
It's about a $10 levy rate that will include the state, county, school district, Lacey Fire District 3, the port.
It's the postcard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about
Someone to text
8
me.
or so
Yeah.
jurisdictions, so yeah, I'm guessing it's right around 44,500 per year.
Yeah.
So the city's about 7%, so that $351 is about 7% of the total. So, as continue your conversations, we could always come back to this. We could change the levy rate. You could see how much might be available on any annual basis, as well as the impact on an average home. In terms of the debt conversation and the maintenance and operation conversation, really this takes the amount generated from the previous tab, and we could just change that percentage. If you want to reserve 50% for M&O, you could see that that's 1.65 million for maintenance operation and 1.65 for capital as you go forward. This also shows you what we could possibly go out and borrow. That's the maximum amount. If we took that 50%, 1.65, that could result in just over 20 million in terms of borrowing power. We could change that to any percentage you want. If you want to save 25% for maintenance operation, you can see that changes to 825,000 per year for M&O and about 2.5 for capital, whether that be a pay-as-you-go or you might leverage that towards debt. That could generate almost 31 million. So as you have those conversations, we'd be glad to pull this up on screen, play with the numbers a little bit so you can see what's in the realm of possibility in terms of borrowing and as well as the potential impact it might have on a typical home in Lacey. So any questions, or is there anything you want to see right now in terms of options before you get started?
What is the percentage of single family ownership versus multifamily?
Ooh, I don't know.
Okay.
Just trying to even think if I could tell you how many single family homes are in Lacey. I don't think I could do that either. But it's multifamily is definitely growing. I think we've all, as we drive around Lacey, that's almost been an explosion in multifamily. Gosh, I could certainly look at that so you can kind of think about that in terms of multifamily versus commercial
The
versus.
balance of who is single family taking the brunt of it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
Good question.
yeah, I think if we took a look at the total number of households, that would
Right.
probably give that answer, so.
Though a multifamily, say an apartment complex, the apartment complex is going to pay the property taxes. It'll be passed down, of course, or likely to the
Mhm.
renter. So renters would have a stake in, voting something in as well as a homeowner in that it could affect their rents and such like that, but they'll be one step removed from it.
The
Correct.
City of Lacey website says that a total of 68% are single family detached homes. As far as housing in the city.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing our job.
Teamwork. Thank you.
Somewhere.
Yep.
PhD.
Corey, I'm struggling to understand debt service obligations versus pay-as-you-go. And I don't know how far down into the weeds you're expecting us to get in terms of a formula for how new revenues through a metropolitan and park district would be allocated. I always viewed issuance of debt as where you have a critical need in a relatively short period of time that you simply don't have the resources to pay unless you enter into long-term debt. And of course, you've just described a scenario for us where you issue 20 million in debt and you're going to pay 32 million over 20 years in terms of debt service on that. So I guess I don't know if I've got a question there. I'm just trying to figure out how we would translate, if that's generally accurate, how we would translate that into actually making a recommendation that would be that specific, rather than leaving it for others downstream to best know how to allocate revenues. So I don't know, I'll just throw that out if anybody wants to react.
I think that might be more of a
Yeah.
philosophical issue for the work group, but I think really from my viewpoint, I don't want the work group to think that, well, we only have 1.6 million per year. There's no way we could do that $6 million project. So in terms of you're thinking through those larger projects, you're going to have to balance the cost of that interest. And is that particular project that is multi-millions of dollars, is it worth that interest? So, it's a question I can't answer for you all. We could certainly help you see those numbers, but I think that's the issue at hand. What is the priority of those projects? And are we willing to pay for it? And how are we willing to pay for it?
Great food for thought going into the activities for sure.
I just worry, I'm not a voting member, but I worry that I would be ill-equipped to decide how much should be for maintenance and operations and how much should be for capital. When you were talking about a percentage, would we get a staff recommendation on that, is 25% too much, too little? I don't really know. And I can see playground equipment that's maybe needs to be replaced, but I don't,
Sure.
maybe a little bit building on Mark's point. It's just like, I'm not sure I have enough expertise to be able to opine that.
I think it depends what projects reach the top of the priority list. You pointed out, there's a very big difference between maintaining a piece of playground equipment versus maintaining a facility. I said, I think that the museum project was over $1 million per year. So if that happens to be the project that rises to the top, that's a much different conversation in terms of the maintenance and operations costs. That may be where we come back here and look at this percentage and go, well, we need at least $1 million. So that's gotta be whatever that number is, 35% or whatever the number is. So I think it really depends on the results of how you prioritize those projects as to how you might fund that. But it could go the other way too. You could look at affordability, the impacts on a household in terms of setting a ceiling on how much of an impact you may want to cause or have the voters consider. And that might dictate how big that list is. So, it's really at the discretion of this work group to navigate that. I think it'll happen organically. We'll kind of see as you get into your next exercises in the polls. You'll get a first glimpse of what the collective, kind of gut feel is for those priorities. And then we can look at this funding or however you want. So I think you're probably going to change your mind about 10 times as you go through this, is my guess.
But I think, Daphne, I could be wrong about this, but in my mind, I'm all in on a metropolitan park district, going to the council, going to the voters, but I would envision that before you would go to the voters, you'd have to have a package. You'd have to say, for this 50 cents per 1,000 of assessed valuation, here are 12 projects that will happen in addition to maintenance and operation support, in addition to deferred maintenance being attended to. So I think we're going to have to, or eventually the product has to include a list of deliverables to the voters. But how you assign a particular value to how much is capital, how much is deferred maintenance, how much is M&O, I agree with you. I think that's going to be a difficult thing for us to do.
But at the end of the day, don't we make the suggestion and then the council makes the.
Say that again.
Sorry, I'm like losing my voice. At the end of the day, we make a suggestion, but council has final say and all that, and they're gonna do their numbers and run their. So it seems a bit redundant to like go through and really hash out nitty gritty on it when they're gonna do the same thing. And I think if we keep that larger picture of just this is in general what we would like to see, they're gonna hash out those numbers and flesh that out in a way that we aren't capable of, because that is their job.
Yeah, I know. I
Park
agree with
staff
you.
do that, the city council won't do that. Park staff will do that, and then city council will agree on what, because city council isn't gonna crunch the numbers really, would they? They're gonna let you guys do that and.
Well, this group will make a recommendation to council
Right.
and then it's their discretion really.
Of course, yes, to,
Yeah, but staff will help wherever we can.
And I think we're gonna do an activity or two, which might kind of help clarify a little bit of things. So. Yeah, is everyone, still have their questions? Good. Okay, well, then we are going to. So to go.
I was worried about that.
John has a question. Oh, hi, John, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I just wanted to kind of put a period on everybody's statements so far and just remind folks that regardless of whatever percentages and everything else that might be applicable, it's still larger than what we have in guaranteed funding right now.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, so I believe now, are we going to be going on to our? Activities?
Yep. So now that we've established some direction and focus towards an MPD for funding, we're gonna have you do 2 polls.
Jenny, could you speak up just a little
Yes.
bit, please?
Yes, sorry.
Are we
Never
on
been
to
told
item
I'm
C
too
here
quiet.
now? Are we on to item C?
Yes.
Thank you.
So now that we've established that an MPD is focused for funding, we're gonna have you do 2 polls related to maintenance and operation and capital spending. The first poll that we're doing will ask you to give us guidance on when to address M&O versus capital funding. And the second will ask you to give us direction on the percentage amounts on what should be spent on maintenance operation versus capital spending. So we're gonna be doing several polls throughout the evening. None are binding and there will be an opportunity for discussion, so don't be alarmed. And then to your point that some of you have brought up, we also realize you may want some context and background information related to M&O. So the National Recreation and Park Association collects data from cities nationally and does a split and comparison on maintenance and operation versus capital spending. And on average, about 53% is spent on M&O and 47% is on capital. Of course, there's a range depending on every community, and part of your work is to analyze the challenges that we've discussed and make a selection based on what would work best for us. So just to give you a little bit of background information and research that we've come up with. So our first poll is going to be again on capital versus maintenance and operation spending. So to open the poll, we're gonna pass these around. You're gonna use your camera to scan these QR codes, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code here. If you don't have a phone, let me know. We have iPads that I can get for you. And then for the folks that are online, Carter will be emailing them to you. Does anyone need? Does anyone need help accessing this or need a iPad? Don't know yet.
Let you know in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can come around and help for sure.
Open your camera. Just hold it over it.
Or if you have a QR
They
code.
figured out how to do this in QFC, so maybe.
And hold it over it.
Oh,
And
they've
then
got
it'll-
this by
there
getting
should
on
be
the
a little
menu.
bubble that populates that says like Menti or something in it.
Little yellow.
Little yellow. Are you on an iPhone or an Android?
There you go.
There you go. Yeah,
And then it should open right to your.
Yes, and it's the
That
first
pretty, isn't
link
it?
that was sent to you guys online.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Hold, you're ready for your next.
Thanks, Jenny.
Homeover's next.
So it says presenter
You're ready
hasn't
to-
changed slides yet. Is that what everybody's getting?
When
Question.
should
Yeah,
maintenance and
I answered
operations?
it.
Oh, okay, then yeah, you're good.
On to the next one.
We should start answering.
Yes.
And you said non-voting should also answer, right?
This is a non-official little poll here. See where the group is on.
Okay, there's also a little button at the bottom that has a thumbs up, so if you hit the thumbs up, that tells me that you all have gotten.
Oh, I see.
Whatever he's
Oh, I haven't changed the size.
Is this crazy or what?
Yeah, you're ready.
Submit. Maybe on mine,
Oh,
maybe yours.
I think there might be one person.
where's my pink?
John, Kathy, did you get on there okay?
Yeah, you found?
Are you pink thumb?
I have a pink thumb.
She's got a pink thumb. Mine's blue.
Yep, no problems here.
Right.
I did.
Maybe it's based on how you voted
That's
or
like three
something.
times, three times, 4 times.
Okay.
You stop pressing, it just sends it up in the corner down there. It's a reflection.
It won't,
like
it won't, no,
Jim?
it's not gonna do it more than
I have
once.
to try it again.
No, it's not gonna do it more than once.
Okay.
It-
No,
See,
it
look
did.
down there, it gives you all
No,
the.
yeah.
I usually find a teenager to do my text.
I definitely hear that.
There we go. It's fun. Yeah,
And
Who's the kid that needs a pigeon?
I know, right?
that's probably me.
I've got a sticker on the side of my wall. So you can pass it around.
So mine is still green, does not mean it didn't take.
There you go,
I think it's got 10 up there. So we got, there's 3 people are missing.
Okay, so submit,
Yep, that's it.
and it tells me, before it told me I already submitted that question, when I had not.
By the time.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're good. Okay, so is everybody taking the survey?
I don't know, it says 10 thumbs up, so 13.
Yep, but 13 people.
Oh, there's 11.
Yep. Okay,
Okay,
so we'll look at the results.
it's just one question, right?
Yep, just one question so far.
Thank you.
So it looks like it's pretty unanimous that immediately upon receiving the funds is when M&O should be factored in.
All the pink ones voted that. All the pink. Oh. Just kidding.
Welcome to the future.
You're gonna be so good at this when you're done. They're gonna ask you to give presentations.
Listen, I'm gonna impress
Okay.
my family.
And
Yes.
so now you should have, in the
For
same
Christmas.
screen, you should have another poll question, and this one asks, how should future funds be spent? And so you add 10 points and assign percentage points based on new capital projects or maintenance.
So you either add 10 points or,
You gotta.
You have to
add
distribute 100 points between the two.
okay.
I wish it made noise so I could.
This is fun. There you go.
Oh, thanks. That sounds awesome.
So we're just filling in the middle box, right?
Fill in 2 boxes to sum to 100.
All,
Yeah, the middle, those
So,
buttons are to take
You
it
could
up and down.
Think
instead of
about it as
typing.
percentage.
Oh, I
What
see.
percentage of
Okay.
funds should be spent on
Okay, I got
capital,
it.
what percent
You
should.
have to use 100 points. Well, I tried, it won't let you. Like we got a couple more people.
That was the only one that we haven't. Type of poll.
Send me the results.
Okay, ready to see these results?
Yes,
There we go.
I don't
13 people.
Don't send me that, don't send me that. I didn't ask for this.
so I lost the.
I should get it
Slide.
back coverage.
Yep, it takes, this shows the nap.
Slide up. Oh, where did I?
Safari was the first one.
Go to your Safari.
We're all cheating.
And then it should be the last tab you had open, yeah? Or you could just scan it again, open it.
Tab I
Mark,
have.
did you get yours?
Yeah, that bottom, there it is.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
What do you guys?
So we done?
Same
You
thing.
don't have, oh, we're only at 2?
Look up on the screen, that's the results.
Yeah.
So 53% and 47%.
Because it's averages. You have only 10. Oh, yeah, because. Odd number.
And you go on to the next one. Activity D.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and go to activity D now.
That was it?
Isn't that's the great thing about Menti, it just.
Yeah.
Wanted more.
We're still, we got
There's
more.
gonna be more.
Oh,
There's gonna be more. No, you weren't. If only it could be that simple.
We'll go home now.
And this is the Parks Capital Improvement Program ranking with revenue consideration.
We're moving to item D.
Yes, sir.
So our polling is done.
For that part.
We have one more poll.
It's that easy, you don't even have to pass your papers forward or put your name on it. No grading.
There.
Fill in the bubble.
You got
completely with the
100%
number
tonight,
two
Mark.
decimal.
Okay, so our next poll that we're gonna do is we're gonna
A
ask
plus.
you, this one's gonna be ranking the PCIP. So it's, yep, so this is not the same. Yep, different code.
Get rid of that one.
So don't use the same one.
Oh, yeah, do you want to pass the other ones in?
I haven't tagged it.
So before taking the poll, just a reminder that some criteria to consider in your ranking could include discussion topics that we've had in the past, community input, deferred maintenance, replacement projects, new projects, and ongoing M&O needs. Okay, and for you, for folks online, it's the third link in the email.
And I'm gonna, before you guys get started, I'm gonna have Jenny say that last part again, because we were busy passing things out, just remembering all the considerations, because there's a
Yep.
lot to it.
Yep. So, discussion topics that we've had, importance of community input, deferred maintenance, replacement projects, new projects, and ongoing maintenance and operation needs are all the things to consider.
And can you review the community input priorities one more time?
Yes. I'm trying to think of where the slide is.
Splash park,
You have it?
Covered playgrounds,
The 1 through 29. we did
indoor
Mhm.
swim, warm places to swim inside,
We're ranking each
Indoor playground.
or field,
1 through 16.
Just want a trail.
trails,
Walking trails.
If you want to
um,
look at the new one.
strongly want.
together.
And I feel like sometimes it's just my own bias.
What we already had planned, like not new property for field,
So
field.
there's rank
So I need to go
these,
actually, there's 15. I need to put out.
So you can move arrow up and down and it'll
Up or
move
down.
it up.
You can even
Do the down
drag it.
arrow, it'll move it down.
Or drag.
So I'm just going by, you know, each one moving to the place you want.
There should be two surveys. One is on the new, they're separated by new and replacement project.
This is new. Okay.
So you can either use this and drag,
Oh,
or you can use the arrows.
and so we're ranking them all then?
Yes, so
Okay,
do this first section of the new ones, but then if you go down, there's also a section of,
Just
Oh,
keep
there's
it.
Look at that way, or you
15
can just grab
yep,
the hamburger.
then here's the
menu.
section of the replacement ones.
Like.
You know that there's some of those spaces.
Yes. It won't
Yeah.
let you go to the second one until you do the first.
No, but I do have a paper printed version.
Oh, I see which one you're.
Yeah, the 1 to, well,
I
the
saw
1
that.
through 29, I'm trying to remember how we. I really liked how we did.
It's in there, but-
There's two lists.
Cause we did, but I also think we looked at it as we looked at it for money that time versus what the priorities were. So we didn't have the priorities.
Because part of our due diligence is keeping priorities,
Yeah.
public priority front of
But
mind.
we were doing it repairs and stuff in accordance with me.
So the M and O, they have it separate down at the bottom, so it kind of helps.
Fix that. Thank you, Jane. You're so kind to me.
Anyone need any?
I need all kinds of.
Kathy or John, are you needing assistance? Are you guys good for you?
I'm getting.
Doing great.
Let
Okay,
me know
thank
if you
you.
guys,
Just wanted
if
to-
anybody would like a paper version of the list to look at.
Is this helpful?
Jenny.
Can you?
No,
No, I'm doing fine. It's just, my fingers is bad. Like, it keeps moving. And then they say I've done that one. I'm like, no, it's okay. I just have to grab all the way.
You understand there's two different lists.
Yeah.
We don't have the.
Can you remind us
Posterity for this right
which one of the splash pads was gonna be located where the family?
The number one, the central.
Okay.
Central, west.
Does anybody need a hard copy of the projects?
Can I run on a piece of paper?
Okay, wait,
Let me know.
this is beyond me. Okay.
Do you help Ruth?
No, I can do it.
Very touch sensitive.
Ah,
Use.
you, dirty rat, dirty rat. I don't wanna do the hair all the time. I want this.
I feel like
You can move it.
I've committed myself to the
I know,
arrows.
I tried.
Oh, it's just not moving like we're.
Okay, the central
but the one I
Lacey
want,
Venus, the
I got
Nisqually.
Oh, I should get my stylus on. Never mind.
There you go. I'm trying. Oh, okay.
It's crazy.
Hmm. Oh, I feel. Maintenance. So I don't know how to do that one.
Okay, I think so. I'm just.
No, I mean, they're all
This
to me
is the P.
relatively equal in
So I
value.
broke it up from what we did on this one differently, right? Because we.
Hopefully next we can
It's
do.
just two separate lists. This the new
First
ones
one's the
and then
first
the
one,
very
right?
bottom
These are all small
replacement
enough.
ones
Right.
right now.
Just bring your 10 of these in your book.
Wow.
This year's one is a little easier.
Oh, Daphne, look at you coming in with.
I like it. I was like,
Big
keeping
fingers.
Same project.
Go horizontal. Go horizontal.
I wasn't good.
Daphne is brilliant.
Oh, horizontal.
Yeah, Daphne for
Good
president.
job, Daphne.
Yeah, landscape is so much easier.
Only takes 15 of us.
I know.
We'll get it.
How many random community members does it take to complete a survey monkey?
Darn clever.
Are you doing okay?
I'm done.
Oh, okay, great.
Sure.
That's right. So there's just the two on this cycle?
Correct.
Okay. Because I'm getting something here that says it wants me to do something weird.
Southwest Lacey. What is Southwest Lacey?
I think like the Rainier Vista Park area or Bush Park.
College and Yelm Highway
Southwest as well.
area.
What's that?
Say College and Yelm Highway-ish.
It's weird.
Ruddle,
Oh, Ruddle, yeah.
Ruddle and Yelm Highway.
Ruddle, yes.
Do you need the link again?
Nope, I've done it.
Okay.
I think.
Sideways is brilliant.
That's big.
Well, no, it's just we kept moving it, like it wasn't moving them in the spots I wanted. We'll see. We'll see how the results come out.
Which I wasn't on the visit. Brooks was the one off of College Street. That was like the
Meridians did we go see?
We went to Meridian Park, not the North Meridian campus.
North Meridian is the one that's undeveloped.
Shared with contractors.
The North Park development is the one we went to see. I'm sorry, you're saying?
No,
No.
we
Meridian
went to
Park.
Meridian Park, not the North one.
The sports field development and so those are two, that's divided in for Meridian Park. Sports field and potential pickleball courts are two separate categories, then, right?
That's right, same
Okay.
park, that's the same park.
Okay.
That's the one we went to.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yep, the other one is.
There's that.
You see, yeah,
Okay, right.
yep,
Okay,
that's the 5 acre parcel that's all natural at this point.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It's just on paper money, so it doesn't make any difference, right?
For the last time I voted, things didn't turn out too well.
Yeah, me too. Even.
Because if you think about the way the parking lot curves there, and then college is
Are
a
we gonna
north
add-
south facing
Well, we got-
street.
We only have 5 so far.
Yours are down?
I know, I know.
Oh, that's a good. Remind me the other day. Just on this weekend, I watched 4 football games, which is really unusual to me. I thought it was supposed to have a break.
Oh, I know, I'm just, it's like.
And the Seahawks, but WSU lost, and then I also followed BYU. And they went into.
That's ruining the patio.
Saturday.
That's only on, are you?
She's on the second, are you on the second one?
Second. Against who?
Not family.
It's all good. We all work it.
We're at the game.
Everyone works at their own pace.
Well, that's easy for you guys, but it was hard.
You did pretty well.
Just ready to keep I found that survey monkey one a little bit tough myself.
Just sorry, I'm not, I'm still.
It wasn't moving them where I wanted to move them and then I thought it did. and-
I know, I'm still. I just wanna make sure. I just wanna make sure that it's tallying the.
So where is the southeast part?
I do performance
Spray
reviews
park.
from the governor's office.
You know, I don't think there's been like a specific
Identified.
it's just the kind of the 4
Last
quadrants.
Couple years.
Oh.
There was some
I
legislative.
feel like that was the one that we didn't have identified.
Yeah.
Park board.
Yep.
You know, J Lark,
Say again?
the legislative auditor's office, was the performance auditor.
I spent 55 years.
I'm done. I'm
I
done.
think I've got that.
So, interesting, you guys.
Homan Park is the one with the tree. right?
Yeah.
It was that one where like, we didn't even know that was there.
Other than the results wash.
College. Yeah, results.
If you attend those meetings.
Yeah, I work on, I work with results watching.
Oh, no, so you're thinking of Brooks.
College.
Yeah,
College.
Yes,
Yes, that
the
was the
school
one,
bar-
with
bus
the
barn.
tree, the big trees
Yes.
that were tearing up.
Yeah, by the kind of school district bus barn.
Oh, Hunter Park, that's the big park. That's where they have the facility. Yeah, that's important.
I was scanning my brain for the map.
Oh, thank you.
That took me that long. Wait, doesn't sound right.
The whole agency just exists by executive order, so theoretically, yeah. anything should happen. Yes. So this is where, after we go.
My sister used to work for Bob.
I'm not sure exactly what.
5 people responded.
There's 53 on his transition.
But
But I did it for Lowry. That was, we didn't have Zoom and Teams and all of that technology to help us with.
Yes, okay.
I would assume a lot
Got
of
it.
lines.
Oh, it's right for me anyway, it's fine.
On the rack, playground replacement equipment, do we have any sense of which of those is more popular with the little kiddies and more used or?
Either of your, team.
The main one, Jamie's.
Anyone?
The main one, would that be the more expensive one?
Yeah.
This is the dirty Thomas.
Oh, perfect.
But we're also.
Yeah.
Just like all the.
Located in the insurance, I mean, we're building a huge.
We're in Helen Summers. Helen Summers.
There's money allocated for the
Turf. It's gorgeous.
You know who she was, right?
Yeah, they actually just put.
Yeah, for the synthetic turf replacements, yes.
The rack, so priority wise, we wouldn't need to
Arguably.
put that up there since money's already allocated to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at it.
Or what would be,
If you wanted to
do it,
suggest that we don't replace fields with that money and it could go somewhere else like playground.
She had significant.
But it has to stay with the.
People get a handicap, somebody with a disability and any assistance.
Time at the legislature, so she
The neighbors.
stand down at the right time, so.
But it is a neighborhood, the expectation, I think, is use it as a green space and the neighbors can use it.
Was it the G building?
No, that's just some soccer stuff.
Yeah,
They're called the G rooms. It's 3 separate rooms, but the walls can be pulled together.
I was moving mine around and I don't
I'm the same as you, so don't feel bad.
Okay, this is good as I said.
Looking at the red.
Right?
Just behind.
Well, this is a preliminary list, so you
Yeah,
can,
so this, we'll see,
Flora.
yeah,
we'll see.
you'll need to discuss it, yeah.
And
So hard.
so we're almost there.
I'm trying so hard, you guys, I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay, you're okay.
Decision fatigue.
We are gonna be running late tonight. So just want to pop that out there.
Say that again, please.
We're gonna be running late tonight. A little bit later than our 7 o'clock, because it's almost 7. As an FYI.
Oh.
We're gonna get a lot.
I know, I'm so, okay.
That's right.
Do we have?
More than
I look at last thing.
Taking responsibility.
Everyone send a shout out to Kathy Beach for watching my children.
Shout out, Kat.
Shout out to you. Shout out to my mom.
You have registered.
Nailed it.
Yeah, we got more. 13 in. 9 of 9.
9, woo, 9.
Results are coming in from the East Coast. Or no. Late results here.
Guess we take it serious.
Gold stars on all of our charts.
Mine was trying to remember what we did and how we kind of formulated that plan, even though it's set up differently, I still kind of feel the same way. about
I was going back to that.
it. Yeah, I wish we'd had the paper, I was like, they may have teaching.
Online people.
Yeah, and yeah, trying to move it in there, make sure it was. Yeah, 1 through 20, 1 and 29.
And we have the community at the forefront. We did. Okay, I'm processing.
Yeah, because we asked the question, if we did this. Would that be, because you put this right in there and you were like, it would be sure.
Kathy, are you okay? Fine?
Yeah.
And a 10.
Are you good? And then Sean, are you good?
How many do we have?
Yep.
Yeah, that pulls it up in. Okay, so we're.
Nobody did a hit submit.
I think, yeah, I think we might have someone that hasn't hit submit. Could you just double check?
Did I do this?
Picture of it. Wait, wouldn't that be awful if it was me?
I'm on the cookie phase.
Certainly be.
Yeah.
Back to the cookie.
It was
Thank you
certainly
for taking the
normal.
survey. I'm good. I did it. I went.
Thank you.
Good,
Okay,
thank
we're
you.
good.
Well, they didn't thank me.
Must be Kathleen up
Did
there.
you hit something? Did you submit?
Thank you.
It was in
I
the very.
submitted, so.
Okay.
There, did that one. No, now I'm doing something else altogether.
There it is.
There we go.
Nailed it.
There we go. Busted.
No, she had done it. She's on the right one.
I
She's
am.
on the cookie page now.
Oh,
She had
it
her
was
submit
Karen.
button. It was Karen. We found out.
We're throwing her under the bus.
It's all good. You're human. We're all human.
Fine, yeah.
So,
Because you did an
we need
amazing,
one more?
I'm just not techie.
because you did an amazing job.
Karen,
with her.
Yet.
Yeah, it's
The power
Is
of
it
the.
Jen?
app.
You still doing?
Oh, there's 11, 12, and 12. So wasn't you one of the?
Is it you?
I don't know, I closed out of it, it's gone.
I'm off the hook.
Are we supposed to be doing something now?
So we, in just a moment,
No, I mean on our phones.
so in just a moment, once we make sure we have everybody. We are going to take a short 10-minute recess. We will be coming back, after the poll, so we'll see what's going on. That gives them time. I do want to remind everybody, we're not supposed to talk business during recess. Business. This business. And, so it is. Should I wait 30 seconds till it's actually 7 o'clock?
What do we have yet to do, Madam Chair?
Well, Mr. Mark, we're gonna come back and see the results and say if we agreed on them. And then if we do, staff will take it back and work on the recommendation for council. And they'll bring that back to us as long as we can all come to a consensus and agreement tonight, and that'll be our final meeting.
So is we taking a break to let you guys have some time? Is that the point?
Yep, so we're gonna populate another spreadsheet and then we're gonna have you take a look at everything together.
So it's 7
We're gonna
o'clock.
combine the funding with the PCIP ranking, and that'll just take us a second to do. So you've looked at the funding, you've done your ranking, but now we're gonna marriage them together really quick.
So we'll be back at 7:10.
Do we have to leave?
I don't think
No,
so.
you just need to not talk business during the 10 minutes, so.
Did he?
I did.
Feel free, feel free to walk around though, take a little. Yeah, come over.
Oh, the right,
I think those when we meet up just for a second.
Oh.
Just so I can sit down and just- Pull back away.
Yeah, he thought.
You wanna sit here when you drive?
It is good.
And so he's.
Great.
The squeeze is like a hard thing to make it cost effective, because of those kids we give to the district.
Ruth, what's your,
And,
what's your
it's
role?
hard to keep it
in
cost
the
effective and
this year?
still
Or every
meet
year?
a need and
So when
like,
these
there's plenty of other
people
students
retire,
options
come
out
under
there.
my committee, so
More
we'll just
expensive.
make sure that
Like,
people are signing up.
But that one for the like
But it-
resistance that it gives, but like the depth, it's soft enough for smaller kids, you know what I mean?
And
And
it's
it
raised
can't be
when
like
everything
picked
will
apart
last
like
year did.
Yeah.
And it's
No,
not
that's the other
really.
worry is that if you get a bicker, which is,
weird.
well, it's
She
like,
just took
you
my.
know, pick away. That or the
But-
sticking of the
And
pencil.
it's-
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
put
where
on
you're
my
like,
kids,
there's
it's
something
put
about
on
like
my
sticking
kids.
your on erasers, like
Oh,
put
yeah.
it together. The first thing he was doing was like, how do I pull this thing apart? I wanna stab in, I wanna put the little piece out of it, but I
You had one.
yeah, like, the one you're gonna get.
It's just one of those things that go.
I mean, sensory systems are.
Other bit is.
We're all regulated all the time. It's
Well,
not
yeah,
set it up.
principals,
Giving.
and it just has been happening, but all these things now. I was seeing.
Yeah, but they can just. That's something that's so cool about this work.
Yeah,
It's not the district right now, particularly at the
Yeah,
elementary
before, I
age,
don't
that like,
know who was doing
starting at a
it.
normal,
What's happened.
so many of these kids in early
So-
elementary, to the point that by the time they're in
There you
middle
go.
school, they're gonna be like,
We have it.
you know.
Did
I
we
just
get
put
somebody
nitrogen
to
on me, or I have my thing, and it's like a normalized.
take your position in North
Yeah,
Boston?
Cause usually,
Bounce it
yeah,
around.
cause you
Yeah.
get targeted as, yeah.
And, we might have somebody take Judy.
Yeah. Well, he didn't talk about that in our bigger
I was
meeting.
kind of talking to her
Like,
about it. So
when
I
you
don't
think
think
about
that
all
was
buildings
interested in
outside
that.
that, it's so
Yeah,
true.
they've got pretty soon find somebody because
Vestibular and like.
I know Jim Cole.
Outside of school.
The secretary at the time. You know, and I was telling Bill.
Are basically assuming.
Before that.
To like register.
I said, I'm selection. I don't. So, but nobody thought anybody. But it's always been.
So Troy's on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I cast at him. In front of Deb, you know, I'm just, well. because I can't communicate with Deb. Yeah, last year, and Amy said, tell him, just like you told me.
Well, I just don't intentional.
I know, because
And
seriously.
They couldn't be serious because they're trying to, like we were saying, release it.
But
Get something into the, yeah, so it's like, well, yeah, I intentionally.
I could just say, see you later.
Yes.
Like, everyone in the halls, but if
It's so hard to keep it going because
I guess
so
something
they
else.
have to scramble.
It's like a kid, like, I've got to go to the district.
Yeah.
Just all this.
That's just,
Yeah, attention.
that's easy.
Well, I don't think I know.
Well, they haven't passed.
Yeah.
So
Go.
they-
No, no,
what
touch
they-
it.
They never do other things.
Beautiful property.
But keep it together.
One of the buyers, I have to say, I get insurance.
I got a call from Amy.
Right,
To
right.
give me, so I can give them some information.
And it's so
And,
exciting, it's so funny.
Well, Terry called Amy. Said, okay, is this what's going on? Can I give this guy?
Getting this
She
work,
said,
I mean, but
well, yeah, but it doesn't
for all
make
those
sense.
purposes.
Why is Young's got two
Yeah.
groups of people working on the same thing?
And
And
everybody
everybody's
wants
getting
to
bigger,
get every
bigger,
buyer
can
from
use
you.
it.
He gets really mad at everyone.
And she said, well, yeah, they're getting closer to that. When I talked to this guy.
And then he did it to Christopher while they were in speech, because Christopher's making him do something hard, I guess. But he was like, we need to talk.
But that is.
Because that's what everybody does. And they're like 1995.
Working for the same things.
Because it was like.
So they're just doing one of the cards.
Because he meant it. Oh, he meant it.
I meant it.
It's so unfortunate.
And
And I know it's naughty.
So-
And
I should.
I'm mad that it's not.
And so they came, so I showed them, you know, they drove around.
Absolutely.
Like it's
standing
and I
up,
took it out.
like,
Because
that's really appropriate. Yeah, like I'm first graders.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
I'm
trying
mad
to-
and frustrated, this is the thing I see other people doing to convey.
And,
This is, yeah, it's very age appropriate.
Right, so I took
Because
them
then I
down.
go through, I have some more cuts in the district.
Kids.
Yeah.
She was doing it to
Road
me.
because there's.
I was giving.
When they figured out the road, so I took it down.
Yeah, Chris, yeah. Yeah.
And she goes, so what happens to the wood piles? I said,
Yeah,
"Well,
he's got challenged.
pay the contractor to get rid of them or you burn them yourself.
They're talking about the problem.
Well, how do you get on the
But
property?
yeah,
Well, you
no,
build
I'm
a road.
And then moving on to
You know, 'cause, you know, it's just,
Yes.
yeah, just clear it now. And then right next door is for you, you know.
It's like, no, I can't
She
do
goes
that.
like, it's very different than Mr. Washington, when you drive out, it's flat, it's been there, it's safe, fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you gotta build a road, and then you gotta put in some septic.
And there is.
Just take
There's
something
something
else to like
he
that.
has got to figure out how to get
The last two.
Talking about.
You know, it's just, it's like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah, he would.
Very interesting.
Contact.
So they're.
Person was gonna be. I had thought Mary Davis.
Nothing to do with
Because
But
she's
it-
retired.
They're gonna be probably
She's
more.
on there.
Yes, and I don't.
You know, Lori?
Flatter.
I do.
She's
Oh,
on
wait,
the-
did she come here the first meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
She was
yes.
talking,
You know,
yeah.
so
I've seen her.
years ago.
So that was kind of.
Yeah. She used to go to school board.
Somebody wanted.
Oh, yeah,
And
yes.
she's
Yeah,
retired.
and we didn't have to.
Things like that.
But she was talking to at our last meeting, talking to Judy.
And now, you know, especially the different churches that have gone out.
Versus my eight.
And I said, she had
Things.
do something.
There's a lot of similarities, like
One
they
lady
received
came
diagnoses
to our
at the same
meeting.
time, similar lives, similar diagnoses.
Yeah, right.
But the ways that.
She, it's not interesting, every little, she's got
Detail.
illness problem, so.
Oh, yeah.
But it's hard too though for people
Different
that
counties.
do stuff, this needs to be safe.
Oh, my God. You just, you're not finding where you go.
Yeah,
You're
and
growing.
We were third grader and
I think
seventh
we
grader.
Person.
He's texting my husband like, okay.
And they retroactively support you in ways that I didn't realize.
Gymnastics, basketball, it's a lot.
So I don't know if that person.
There was a gentleman from Vancouver who.
Maybe somebody that's part of the district.
You're the boss.
It has to be someone retired or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it meant the market.
I mean, my
I don't think it could be an employee. I think there'd be a conflict.
And.
Supposed to do it all the time, but.
Yeah, maybe it's not a good city.
We said, look, very
Yeah.
It's terrible. So yeah, Lala, what do you think? What was your reference?
Oh, I was just looking at, like, what they did, you know, when I was in Most of my legislative papers do that. But I did get to work on one. Publish that in 20.
Where's my?
Yes. Habitat regulates land acquisition and regulation. Looking back there.
Okay, I find my place.
Right.
So then they had like an office.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Not understanding. I would make that above.
Because the person that asked me to do it was the superintendent.
Governor had
are you still attending the facility advisory committee meetings? When's the next one, do you know?
Yeah.
I love the.
It's only been one.
And then that's.
I missed that one.
I mean, it's not that you want
I wanted to.
so they choose
People that.
You guys, it's 7:10. We're gonna come back.
But next time you go.
Yeah. My chatty Cathy's at the end, 7:10. I could see that. Alrighty.
All right, here we are. Thank you for allowing us that break to get everything organized for the next exercise. We've invited Carter to the table. Well, one, he created this spreadsheet. Thank you for that, Carter. Really appreciate it, Carter. Also, we gave us a chance to populate this spreadsheet with the results from that last one. So you can see here at the top, we've got the capital projects. As you know, you prioritize two separate lists. So this one, we'll start with the capital, and you can see the rank there in column F. So you can see, yeah, 1, 2, 3, yep, there they are, right there in order. And so.
It's so much credit.
So
That's
the,
interesting.
We probably already mentioned this, but I'm confused because it could, oh, I see. The first one starts on line 7.
yes.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, so
I
let's,
got it.
yeah,
And
so
then the museum and for Clarkston that have the highlight, why are they highlighted?
So those are projects that have reserve funds currently identified for them.
all
So
right.
the entire project would be funded by the current
Yeah.
reserve allocation, but I just wanted to indicate on here
Perfect.
that they do have reserve funds. So what we're gonna do after we get done just soaking this in and processing what our results are is decide as a group, you know, preliminarily at least, if we wanna cherry pick any of these projects to be reserve funded. And so again, wanted to indicate that on here. That way you're cognizant of the fact that you could be potentially reassigning reserves from one PCIP project to another. Or that, you know, Meridian Park Pickleball doesn't necessarily need reserve funds because it already has reserve funds. Okay. Do we have any observations or questions
Yeah,
about this?
I do. That 5 million for the potential partnership.
Yeah.
So was that, didn't we have something highlighted for them too specially or something set aside
oh, so I think
or earmarked?
it was indicated in a different color on your PCIP list,
Mhm.
just because we wanted to flag that it doesn't fully fund a
No,
pool.
No,
It would be the contribution of the city toward that project.
okay, so we don't have any money earmarked for it
That's
right
correct.
now.
That is
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
And the other thing that I find interesting is that Greg Cuyo Park, the next phase is so high when we haven't even got to the first phase. That's just my observation.
The next phase is bathrooms.
No bathrooms.
Any other initial thoughts about this? Again, we're gonna dive in here in a second.
What,
No, I'll point out too, oh,
what's
sorry.
it all
what-
add up to?
Oh, go ahead.
What's the total cost of all 15?
Too much.
Yeah, this is for us to prioritize, I think.
It's the same number we've been looking at the whole time. It's that 48 million for the cost and then the maintenance and operations for 1 year is the almost 1.9 million.
So about 50 million.
The other thing quickly, just to touch on Ruth's question, with the Greg Hugo Park next phase also includes trails, which was one of the top themes of the public.
When's the first phase gonna be done? I can't remember.
That should be done by fall of 2025.
Oh.
If everything
so
stays
another-
on.
In a year. Just to, and I don't know, if part of this is what we're getting to, but it's an observation, the definite prioritization of the pickleball courts. And I wonder if it's worth conversation. Do we want to prioritize, or do we want to pick maybe which one? And maybe just like somebody picked this one and somebody else picked a different one, but the theme was prioritize pickleball courts. So it might be worthy of a conversation.
Yep, and that's kind of where we're headed next. So now that we have this sort of gut check look at what everybody individually thought, these are really great observations. So that's a great question. Does the work group care to prioritize two? So we have this column here, this ranking, just so you can see from the actual poll what it was. And our next step, once we're kind of just letting the dust settle here, is to go through and look at the option of funding it with an MPD. Magic trick over here is all of these charts. I know this looks a little intimidating. I'm gonna explain what it means, but it's gonna walk us through, if we were to fund 2 pickleball courts, what would that do to our MPD dollars if we were to fund this project? So even in this exercise, this tool is built so that we can look at a lot of different hypotheticals really quickly. And if you're saying, what about pickleball? Well, what about the trails? We can super quick just program that in, clear it back out, and keep going through that. All those scenarios, sort of like we did with Troy and the tax rate. But before I jump into the second part of that, I do just want to show the maintenance and operations rankings and see if the group has any thoughts about it.
I think that looks good.
All right, we're done.
Time to go.
I'm surprised the Rainier Vista playground replacement is so low, as that's one of our larger parks, but.
Yeah.
The most expensive one.
Yeah, that surprises me.
I like Hanover being up on near the top. It's what we're trying to get Lacey to be with the
Right.
midtown and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I worry a little bit. We were skewed by what we saw in our tour. So I will confess, so.
Any other initial thoughts about this one? Okay.
Is Thornberry the one that was the last week or last time had been recently damaged or was being?
So as we walk into the next stage of this exercise, we are going to consider cherry picking any of these projects to be funded by the reserves. So again, nothing we throw out right now is binding. We can just play with the scenario and see how it shakes out. So right now, based on the information Troy told us previously tonight, we have about $1.8 million in reserves that we could reassign.
That we could recommend to reassign.
Right,
Council
thank
will
you.
make the ultimate
For sure.
decision.
So of course, as we're considering that, we would maybe want to consider what we're taking money away from. Potentially keeping some there. The goal is not necessarily to spin this down to zero, but if there were priority projects that the work group wanted to hypothetically recommend, we could see how those add up.
Why would we want to assign a project to the reserves? What would be the advantage of that versus what kind of projects would we consider doing? Something maybe that wouldn't be as attractive to the public for a metropolitan park district, but we feel are important. Why would we pick something? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just curious why we would.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, in the reserves list, there is a category called top comp plan priorities. And then there's some funds that have been assigned to particular projects. So I guess something I would personally look at is that category that hasn't really been assigned to a specific project. And then, I don't know, other considerations,
Yeah, I'd point out, part of the council approach has been to identify those reserves for unexpected repairs. So there's a decent amount of that within the current allocation of reserves. Like the senior center is one. We keep monies there just in case something catastrophic happens, major leak in the roof that might cost $250,000. So there's a decent amount of those reserves that are just for that purpose. They're kind of emergency reserves. So, keep that in mind as you consider how much of those reserves you may want to suggest to repurpose.
So Troy, I'm sorry, so when you talk about this, is that the remaining reserves down there that you're speaking to right now? The
So-
1.8, when you're saying the reserves are kept aside for
Certain
the
things.
senior center or whatever, is that counted into that number?
It is,
So if we were to take from that number, that could potentially affect reserves that are set aside for, like you said, the senior center and a tree falling on it. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right. So that number there is, so you saw the total list was about 4.4 million. That 1.7, so it's at 4.4, this total list. That 1.799 is 4.4 less the 2 reserves for the rack. Because we're considering those as being restricted reserves that have to stay with the rack. So, but that's also something to keep in mind too, because you do have a lot of rack projects that 2.5 roughly could be reallocated. But the kind of the same thing, the field replacement, that was something the council looked at, and that's really where the rec brings in funds is field rentals. So they put a priority on making sure that we had money to replace fields that needed to be replaced. So a lot of those things that, in terms of the council versus this work group aren't gonna, mesh exactly, but
We don't know.
yeah.
So I guess my question for me is, if we're looking at why would I want to shift the reserves? I mean, council, and you guys know.
Well, so I'll point your attention to as I was alluding to earlier, do you mind going back just for a second? Sorry, thanks, Carter. There's a couple on there that aren't necessarily allocated to a specific project. So trail system, yep, parks, comp plan priorities, there's just under 400,000 dedicated to between that one that Carter just highlighted and then the other one down below. I guess the 300,000, that's the building. Is that for emergency repairs?
So committed,
So
committed, restricted, we can't touch.
Well, I was saying like this one specifically, it says comp plan priority, but it doesn't have a specific project. So that's one that I would focus on.
Well, the city isn't self-insured, so like if we have a tree fall on something, we have insurance for that, correct?
Right.
You're talking just true maintenance, our roof is getting old, right?
Well, we have, I think, $100,000 deductible on our facility insurance, so.
Building catches fire, we're not having a
Right.
$10 million loss or something, okay, gotcha.
So, yeah, to Jen's point, if you look at the 2 items that are parks comp plan priorities, so the 93,750 and then the 300,000. Those are pretty easily reassigned. The trail system bike ped plan, that's another one. So that's what, about 650, 647. The rest, it would take some consideration in terms of, moving away from the museum assigned reserves there. So that would be a much different conversation, I think, with the council versus those that are more generic in nature.
So, sorry, just throwing something out, for purpose of conversation, but say, for example, Wonderwood Parks, I don't remember the trails where those, so those 200,000, but if we said we want that 93,000 from that previous slide, plus another 1,000 from the reserves, we could fund the Wonderwood Park Trail reimbursement, correct? And hit a priority without taking much out of the reserve, just as an example. I'm not necessarily recommending, just as an example, okay?
And that was one that was like immediate need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Like,
when it was
it has
all
to be,
to
yeah.
broken up.
Yeah, it's.
It's important to take care of what you've already got.
Yeah.
And I know it's a priority. It felt like it was a group priority. And it ranked number, what, 3?
That's the problem. The keyboard is dying, I think.
Good question.
Go ahead, Jim.
But my question at the moment is, the reserves, the money in reserve has been reviewed and assigned by someone, not this group. So I would not want to undo somebody else's work by trying to reach over and grab reserves that have been reviewed, been assigned, and I see the word committed, restricted, and so on. So speaking for myself, I'm not interested in stealing from the reserve. Stealing may be the wrong word.
Rachel?
Wasn't the point though that two of those things are committed more generally?
I
to
believe
use
that's what
that
they
could
just
be,
said.
that we could say specifically, so you got $250,000 that you said wanted to go toward the trail system. We recommend that 250,000 go to Wonderwood specifically, something like that, right?
And that's
So,
a trail system.
yeah,
Yeah, I understand, but I'm still not willing to do that personally.
so even within that,
Correct.
But
you wanna leave that to the city council's discretion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any other suggestions we can look at? So right now, and I apologize for the keyboard debacle, and if I missed anything. But I know there was a suggestion to maybe include Wonderwood, so from that nearly 1.8 with that $200,000 to do Wonderwood, of course, we're looking at about 1.6 left. Would anyone like to throw out another option for consideration, just to see how the numbers would look?
Well, the Huntingmore Park, isn't that the one that we need to redo the trees and the?
That would be Holman,
Oh, that's fine.
Hunter's the one over here.
By the hub, so,
where we have our, like, a lot of our special events.
Yeah.
events are.
yeah.
I'm sorry, could you
Okay.
go back to the one slide? What was that one dedicated amount? What did it list? Trail systems, bike ped plan, parks comp, okay, so. Bike ped plan.
Like pedestrian plan.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, was there something in mind with that wording? I just was wondering, is it just trails?
Trail system.
Yeah, no, nothing specific for that one.
Okay. Yeah,
I would suggest the Lake Point Park and Tennis Court renovation. It's pretty low cost. Seems like an easy one to knock off. And it adds to accessibility. And it's also, I think you mentioned like our third most used park, if I recall correctly.
The
By
park,
Amtrak
yeah.
in a neighborhood pocket.
Yes.
Sorry, we're still having some keyboard issues, so I'm moving a little slow. Okay, so if, oh, look at that. There we go. So right now with our hypothetical of Wonderwood and Lake Point, we would still have about $1.5 million left in reserve, about 240. So I think John had the point that if we go back to here, we got 250 in this category. And in this hypothetical, we spent 240 on that trail replacement and then another kind of resurfacing project.
the reserves could go to a capital project as well.
They could. I would note something to keep in mind about the capital piece is a lot of these do have M&O associated with them, and I believe Troy recommended earlier to not do reserve projects for things that have M&O. So you'll notice if we select one of these, that M&O is actually gonna go in the MPD bucket.
Oh, I thought we had already selected the Wonderwood trails as well, actually, for the resurfacing.
Yeah. Wonderwood and then
Yeah.
the
That
home
one
and
seems important for me just because of accessibility and those trails are in really bad shape.
So right now we have just Wonderwood and Lake Point for our little hypothetical here.
So throwing out some of those smaller rack projects, and I don't know, maybe if you could speak to that, like if we don't replace the control module for the irrigation system, are we all of a sudden like moving sprinklers around or, you know?
So we, the manufacturer of our current control system is no longer producing the parts to repair the controllers when they're breaking. So the conversion is, have a viable product, what they are for. So what it does repair, we're able to repair that. So this program is a proactive replacement to replace these controllers before they fail. If you have a clock that fails in the middle of summer, and parts are 8 weeks out, you have no water for a month or two in the summer. And so we're trying to proactively replace all those clocks before they fail and we can't get parts to repair them.
catastrophic if it fails and we don't have it.
Yeah, so that's important, yeah.
And it's
So would that come from reserves? Cause that's.
just a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we.
In the scheme of things.
Our data is looking at costs. For the water, yeah.
So that would bring us up to that 284 to ask council to reassign.
And then the home and park, that was the one with the trees.
Yes.
That would definitely needed to be taken care of.
Something you want us to put on the reserves list just for now, for the exercise?
So if we did that, that would tip us
Yeah, no.
pretty close, get a little.
You gotta take care of what you have. But the Huntermore Park, that one is used all the time.
Yeah, how frequently is home and park used?
There's a ton of sports that happen there, like.
Our t-ball leagues are held there.
Leagues, soccer,
I
youth
just wanna
soccer,
know.
yeah.
Right, that's why it's just.
Because it's right next to the high school too, so the high school's business gets there a lot.
And Lacey Elementary,
Not
Lacey,
Holman.
no.
No, behind the.
Which high school?
Down a hill by off of Carpenter.
Holman is by the North Thurston Public Schools bus barn.
Yeah, it's the hard left on Carpenter before you get to the North Thurston facility. If you go right, you're thinking of Huntermore or.
Like behind the post office, kind of.
What's the one that they said Polktown called
High school.
send their students to, yeah.
Oh,
They said
Lacey
Polktown.
Hall,
Yeah.
Lacey Lee, that one.
Yeah, the trees.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Cause they can go to the back. They can take-
Any new capital project considerations for reserves?
We said no.
I think we ran out of money.
Yeah, we're out of money.
Our piggy bank's empty.
Yeah.
We spent 680,000, sorry, 608,000 of reserves so far. Selecting, we have Homan, Wonderwood, Lake Point, and the rack irrigation. And move forward just for now to see how this plays out. Okay. So the next step is to actually talk about the MPD, of course. So I'm gonna just slide over here for a second. So we looked at a lot of different tax scenarios with Troy. For our starting point, just to get us going, I'm gonna start us at a 50-cent consideration. This is super easy to change into any number we want though, so that can go up or down. Right now, I'm just gonna leave it at a 1-year consideration, so of course we're set to get at a 50-cent tax rate, $6.6 million over 1 year. For the work group's initial poll, the request was to do a 47% consideration for M&O and a 53% new capital split, 47-53. Again, as we move through this, we can decide based on our specific needs and project costs if we need to amend that. Okay, so all of that being said, we have, I mean, obviously these are pretty close to 50-50, right? So for M&O, we got 31 and then 34 here to spend. Something else Troy discussed that we didn't fully make a soft decision on, if you will, is a debt consideration. Of course, that isn't really factored in here. This is pretty basic back of the napkin math. I don't know if the work group has any thoughts about the debt consideration piece before we start diving into the projects. Okay. Yep.
I think we ought to really seriously consider it. Some of these projects are pretty big and if we don't get into them, we can't really piecemeal them all that much, but I think it's really should be strongly considered.
Well, and I think that's the benefit of going with the MPD, right? Because we could go out for bonds. And that was one of the benefits of it is the sustainability. We're going out for a 20-year bond.
If we're gonna put a pool in or Red Cuyo, those are expensive.
And that museum is astronomical.
Any other thoughts on that?
I think knowing that it would be needed for the bigger ones, I think it is a good reminder that it might be smart for us to alternate between bigger projects and littler projects so that those are spread out, so we're not doing So we're not recommending a bunch of big projects all at once.
Yeah, so without a debt consideration, as we're looking at, I'm just gonna pick the biggest one here, right, just for the sake of conversation. If this was the work group's top priority and the consensus was to fund that, you would have a decision to make as to just knowing that, well, nothing else is gonna get accomplished, right, in however many years until that project is complete. Which is great, because then we get this awesome, new, amazing thing. Or to your point, Rachel, we could choose to fund some smaller things and meet more smaller community needs quicker. Of course, we all have heard that there's a capital consideration. And just even if we got handed $1 billion, none of this would get built tomorrow necessarily, right? So it looks like for the new capital, at least, like I said, we currently without the debt consideration, just to kind of keep playing this scenario through for the sake of time, we got about $3.5 million over 1 year. The work group ranked the Meridian Park Pickleball Skate Park Pump Track first. Of course, we did not select that one for reserves. So I think it could be safe to say that maybe that would be the top thing for an MPD. At least from the new capital side, since that's what the work group ranked it as. So one way we can do this right is just to click through here and say we're gonna fund these by the MPD. And kind of just keep an eye on these numbers over here and see how quickly they spin down. You'll notice as I'm doing this though, for example, this first spray park actually does have a little bit of M&O included in it, right? And so I know we can't quite see it on the whole screen here, but our M&O numbers, that's being factored in here too, right? This is over, we're just looking at 1 year. If we wanna just see how numbers shake out over 5 years for a second, I forgot my keyboard isn't working, that's not going to work. No. Yeah.
Well, that's okay, we can go with one for now.
We don't need the 5-year, do we?
Okay, well, it might be a little problematic here in a second, but we'll just move on. So keeping an eye again on this number over here. You know, we
So the
planned,
remaining was 2.3 and then we're negative.
yep,
With what you
so
clicked on.
with 1 year, my mouse is working, but the keyboard's not working. You're welcome to try. So the point of looking at the different years was to say, well, of course, we're not going to capital-wise be able to actually carry out all 3 of these projects within a year. So I was trying to illustrate how many years it would take us to get the money we need from an MPD to say accomplish these 3 projects and get us back in the green.
What's the red number?
Little larger.
2 years of MPD
Would
would
the
be
column
enough
be a little
to
smaller?
bring that into black. Right?
Then enlarge maybe
Some.
the screen.
Did you literally just blow batteries over your purse?
No, we have batteries, it didn't fix it.
Oh, I thought that's what you were asking. I'm sorry.
No.
What else is in here?
The lantern?
Okay.
So what,
Please keep me getting confused.
Hey, get it? Hey, try it.
Hey.
Alright, sorry about that.
You.
so what's the final goal to wrap up for tonight?
So we need enough information from the work group ideally to prepare a drafted recommendation in your packet ahead of next time. So there's a few different ways that we could wrap up tonight. The work group could simply decide, yep, we're happy with this ranking. That's our ranking. We're gonna just eventually fund it all. That's great. Just keep the MPD going until it's all funded. The end, right? That's the simplest, easiest way to do it. There's an option where you could reorder this ranking, understanding, yeah, we do have a higher funded one at the top. Maybe the work group doesn't want that. We've kind of talked through that pro-con scenario there. You don't necessarily have to recommend the MPD fund everything on this list. This is a 6-year capital plan. We've talked through the fact that ultimately, despite our best efforts, all of these things are probably not gonna happen in 6 years just due to our capital needs. So there's an opportunity here to right-size the PCIP and push some of these into the next PCIP we look at for the future 6 years.
Just real quick though, I think it would be important to show just a 5-year now that the keyboard's working.
Sure thing.
Just so that you can get an idea of in 5 years' time, you can at least prioritize. Again, it doesn't mean we couldn't, it doesn't mean that we can necessarily pull it off, but that amount of funding would get dedicated to a certain project.
So what is the pool and the youth center all going to go in? I mean,
So the Young Child and Family Center is at the school district site. It used to be the Bucknell.
I know, but
Fields.
how, when are they planning on?
So the school district is planning to open their doors for the classroom portion in 2027.
Okay.
And so the concept is that the school district funds the classrooms. They would own all of the facilities on that site with the exception of the spray park, which the city would own and operate. There's at the site, if you'll recall, there's room for a potential pool in the future.
We could pull the pool and indoor playground down, is what I'm thinking. If they're not gonna do it till 2027, we're not gonna do the pool next year.
Oh,
I
it's-
think they won't
this
move
is a-
forward with that funding, right? Is
What's
that
that?
accurate? Will they still move forward?
Yeah,
with
school
that?
district, yep, so they're moving forward with the classroom portion. But so the concept of the site is the wellness hub for, it's not just young children
Oh, I
support, but it's
understand
also
all that.
support of their families, right? So the recreational components can come in after that.
So that's 2027, 2028. So that doesn't need to be on the third line.
Where would you recommend it go? So I can show that example,
I mean,
if we wanna see how that
Does that
changes
make
things.
sense? I mean, why would you fund it now when?
Is this a 5-year though? That we're looking?
I think what we're looking at right now is just in 5 years, like how far down the list could you get? Just
So
as something to look
hypothetical.
at hypothetically,
This is
right?
all hypothetical.
Yeah, so if
And-
you populate MPD there, you can kind of see how the numbers change.
But aren't we asking the council for the next like 2 years, 3 years? We're looking for 5 years.
So the MPD would operate indefinitely, so there's no sunset on that.
Yeah, so it's basically how to prioritize the projects and how to fund them.
Yeah, so I would say since the youth group isn't even gonna be in place until the 27th, why do we have it prioritized so far up? Why shouldn't it be down lower?
It was the top request from the community, but you raise a valid point about the timeline and that piece of it.
And that's a great discussion for this group. That's the type of thing that you should be
Construction's gonna
looking
take a
at.
couple of years at the same time, I would say, with the pool.
And
So-
the
And the-
taxing district
Yeah.
itself wouldn't be, I mean, even if we recommend it today, there's no way it could be voted on until next November at the very earliest. That's already 2026. It's time to start building. So it sounds weird, but 2027 is basically here.
And we're things that might include a pool because we don't know if we'll have enough money
Yeah.
to build the pool. So I mean, it's been a real interesting process with nonprofits and, public funds and trying to figure out who can apply for what grants and, yeah, it's complex.
But the spray park, it's not the equivalent of a pool, but it's access to some water for folks and young
So
children.
shouldn't that be moved out?
That one's,
That's in there. That's in.
yeah, so that's that spray park number one.
Yeah.
Would be at that site, and then you
Yeah.
come in with a future pool footprint, and the 5 million could potentially fund, just depending on how the design cost comes in, could fund a significant portion of the indoor playground, if not all of it.
So both of these
So-
are
So
related
those
to
are-
the same site.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, I had them like highlighted in blue
Right.
kind of together.
So there could be some merit to maybe moving something more trail-based ahead of the pool, because we will have a water piece already with the spray park, just throwing it out for conversation.
Yep, and on that note, I will flag, the work group did select to break out M&O and new capital initially upon receiving funds. So we do have, again, the two parallel rankings here. So when we said like Wonderwood Trails, that's number 3 as well as this, right? But there are some kind of trail related options in here too. The work group could consider moving up in the ranking. So that would be Meridian Campus, North Park.
We want to talk about the pickleball and land the plane on whether we want two in the top 5? Which one we should talk about? I don't know which one's better.
Yeah.
We have a
there's-
pickleball expert.
You know, there are a lot of people playing it.
So
You want to Rainier Vista brings in a lot more income. That's one aspect of it.
so
You got about $1.5 million right now in pickleball in the top 5.
Well, she was just saying that Rainier Vista brings in more money with the pickleball.
Oh, with hosting tournaments.
But isn't the other one in an area that could use more access to
Yes.
And it's a lot more
amenities?
than just pickleball,
And
it's
it's
also.
basketball and other things as
Yeah.
well.
And it's in a park desert area.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a lot.
One thing I'm thinking about is that if this is a 6-year plan and we're sort of working our way down, 6 years from now to install like initial quadrants of splash parks feels like too long. Like that's a really long time before sort of some basic community desire, like strongly desired amenities would be. And particularly with sort of the urban density building up.
So
that-
which one
That just
has
feels
the
like,
most growth?
Yeah, so we did have the one spray park as
Yeah,
our top
and-
choice, and
and
that's the one
that's-
that's furthest from all the existing spray parks around us at least.
yeah, it's like
So-
across the street from the rack.
and there's Long Lake in there too, which is a different kind of water feature, but.
And I think when I was facilitating with your group, previous time, we were talking about the PCIP ranking, and you were looking at what other spray parks, not just, I mean, Lacey doesn't have one.
Right.
You were
but
looking at neighboring.
Lions Park has one.
Neighboring
Yelp
jurisdiction,
So,
spray parks and
What's
parks.
the park where the Olympia police station is on the west side of Harrison?
Oh,
I've been
yeah.
there off of
by
Harrison.
Garfield up
Yeah.
Creek, yeah.
Woodruff, yeah.
Does anyone want to suggest again, we're just in soft draft mode here, but does anyone want to suggest a recommendation to reorder these in any way? I feel like we keep suggesting things and then kind of settling back in, but how are we feeling?
My sense is that I've been given the opportunity to rank. I did that and I'm comfortable with how it worked out, even though mine didn't necessarily rise to the top or the bottom the way I would like them.
An agreeable man.
And, oh yeah,
I like
just
it
like
how
home.
it's two different perspectives. You've got new capital and you have the maintenance and operations at the bottom. So we have some new things and then we have some replacement things that are coming in. At this point, I feel pretty comfortable with how I feel like we met the needs of the community the best we could and we put in places where we need updates for the communities that are lacking some facilities.
And we are kind of getting the end of this, so just hang with me a little longer. So does anyone have any thoughts on that question before I pose a new one?
The only thing I will add in, I didn't prioritize it very high either, but I worry that we're under considering the senior center and the popularity of that. And maybe that's a little bit based on who was at our events that did the surveys or the age group that might respond to the surveys. So maybe we have an unrepresented group and what their interests might be. So I worry that.
I know that it's very heavily used and it's very, very well needed. Very much needed.
I was surprised how the senior center came in.
Yeah.
So do we feel like we have a consensus to move it, or was that just an observation?
I would suggest we move it up, but
I would put it before Long Lake Park development.
I would too.
I can't, yeah, I find it surprising that the Brooks Park development got so high.
Right, I was too.
Yeah.
Because right now it
Yeah.
is just a nice green space.
Right.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, but
So shall we move it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna place it right here and then keep the rest of the order the same.
Well, I've moved Brooks Park down.
I would too.
Everyone wants to
speak up for Brooks Park. We talked about how it's in a sort of a parks desert and it's an area, it's a lower income area that doesn't really have any other alternatives and it's a very relatively low cost improvement. Doesn't add a ton of cost.
If you move
Yeah, I
the,
would actually suggest something very radical and suggest that we transpose the senior center and the Rainier Vista pickleball courts.
Way too radical.
I did preface it with that.
What's some of the rationale, just for people that thought Meridian Park pickleball was above the Rainier Vista? And I'm just asking, I really don't know. What was the selling point on Meridian Park? Is it the location? Is it was that pretty much what it was?
The need of that community.
Okay.
And that it's not just pickleball.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's more than just pickleball, and it's also a lower cost than Rainier Vista. And like Rainier Vista obviously could use the expansions, but there's nothing there currently. So
The Meridian Park stuff is the only thing I see that's like specifically for teenagers.
And then just to circle us back to the senior center, how are we feeling about that consideration?
you need to move it up.
Move it up, I think.
So
Put it between these two.
since we are prioritizing the Meridian Park pickleball, would the other Meridian Parks be moved down and maybe other things move up ahead of that? You know, so we get,
So this is just a reminder, obviously in a similar location, but a different site. So this would be development of land that's currently not developed at all, sort of across the way. Not saying that against your point, just reminding what these projects.
no, I was thinking the sports field development on the Meridian Park.
And I'm sorry, is that Greg Cougar Park next space? That's for bathrooms and trails? Bathrooms and trail?
And frontage.
And yeah, there's frontage improvements, frontage and landscape improvements that we were able to defer
Mm.
from phase 1A.
So it's a
And
lot
then
of things to make it a real like
utilities.
premier park.
And then-
Utilities, which includes restroom, and then, yeah, more trail opportunities. And specifically could host a cross-country
I was gonna
meet.
say that, yeah, that it could be a cross-country, like a proper cross-country trail.
But that, the cross-country component plays really nicely with the disc golf that's going in phase 1A. And also plays nicely with, it's that multi-use trails for people to enjoy when there's no meet, obviously, which will be, most of the time, there wouldn't be a meet.
It'd be nice to have.
But I know the school district is a stakeholder in that. and
Cross-country
the
meets that. the
St.
kids
Martin's
aren't
University.
Sliding down hills. Right.
Okay, so let's decide. So we're gonna move the senior center up above Long Lake? Is that where we're doing?
Every race.
Senior center above Long Lake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this gets a little.
This race. With pickleballs.
I went to upgrade out of here.
And Long Lake is 9. It'll go up 1 more.
But they're
It'll go down
just
1
percentage numbers.
What about pickleball?
I'm just saying, was it a top priority?
Not from the surveys.
Oh, thank
I
you.
just,
Yes.
yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay, now let me just get this resorted
gonna
really
say-
quick so we can keep it nice and in order.
That's a good point, that. I just wanna go back to while you're doing that too.
Yep.
Is when thinking of the top 5 and thinking about what the community needs are, I just keep going back to that pickleball. I didn't look at it at first, but you brought it to our attention. I don't know if there needs to be 2 pickleball pieces, and I know one of them expands into a pump track or skate features and all of that. But then going out to our community and saying, hey, we listened to you, and by the way, we prioritize 2 pickleball versus making sure we hit everything else. That's a priority for our community.
This was part of my rationale for suggesting my radical approach.
The Meridian Park one, I know that is definitely important.
Yeah, that's neat. They don't have anything.
Yeah, we don't have anything and we've just built a ton of apartments,
Yeah.
lots of housing. And Jubilee is crazy about pickleball. And the kids don't have anywhere really to go.
Yeah,
They just come into our community
I was just
and,
curious, cause I just
Yeah.
didn't know which one, why one was selected over another. I was just
Yeah.
literally curious.
I would be fine with moving Rainier Vista pickleball courts further down. Housing.
So what one would we like to put?
We're just moving it down without changing the rest of the order.
Just move it down 1.
You, I don't know, how far?
Maybe
Comfortable?
below the senior center?
Or
Yeah, below the senior center, maybe.
Sorry. Maybe flip the senior center and Rainier? Does
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
feel?
Is that part of the need?
Flip them or just-
So what was?
Back to that.
Yeah,
Going back to the need.
the
I
senior
agree.
center wasn't in the request, right?
No.
Yeah, so the spray parks are along Lake would be.
Do we feel confident though that seniors were surveyed?
No, I mean, I don't know. I didn't say.
Yeah, we went,
Yeah.
no.
we did go to the senior center and pass out physical surveys, yes. But I mean, that has its limitations as well.
And these are just recommendations. We're just making a recommendation.
And the survey was taken, what, 2 years ago?
We definitely know it's a need though. We know that it was actually too small by the time we moved in.
So it's like a whole another
To the
generation
next
of
phase.
retirees.
So,
So if we think about this on a timeline, just real quick, if the survey was taken 2 years ago. And this is looking like a 6-year plan and you're looking at that senior center, that's almost a 10-year age gap. So you're looking at a whole new generation of retirees that would be utilizing. So I think if we think about it in terms of people who maybe didn't even realize that that would be something. They would want access or yeah,
need
that
it.
they would be retirees or they would want or need access to something like that. I don't know.
Just looking at some demographics also in a quick Google search here, it's like nearly a quarter of adults in Lacey are of senior age. So that's a huge segment of our adult population also.
And by the time we get to doing this, it's gonna be.
Right, we will probably have more than that by then. But just
Okay.
throwing that out there for consideration.
Do we have a recommendation here?
The numbers are dwindling, Wendy.
It's getting closer to moving up.
I would suggest moving Rainier Vista below Brooks, but again, with the radical suggestions.
Oh, it's going back. It's getting closer. I like it.
So if we simply move Rainier Vista, just a similar observation here is we would have 2 meridians. I mean, they're very different. but,
Actually, 3.
well,
And I just,
are the top
I
5.
will point out too, the sports fields was one of the top themes of finishing the sports fields where the city had planned, which there is a huge need in Northeast Lacey.
Are they building a new elementary school out there? Is that where the next elementary school is gonna go in?
Well, I don't think we have any plans.
There's no plan for another elementary?
There's land, but I don't think there's any plans.
Okay, so do we feel good on our top 5 or do we wanna make a move? Make a move, okay.
What are we moving?
So what are we moving the Rainier Vista pickleball court expansion down?
Yes.
Where are we moving it?
Good question. We have the 3 meridian areas, which that's the field development. So what if we move the,
Just move them up, take Meridian, put Virgil above it. Boom.
okay,
Yeah,
split it up. Great.
Virgil's almost at the top 5. Right for decision.
Let's give it
Make
the
it
top,
6.
the top 5.
So Virgil,
7.
did you say, oh.
Do Virgil 5. And then that'll move Rainier Vista,
I say sports field before
Rainier.
the senior.
Let's sports field before the senior.
That's just my vote,
It was,
anyone else
that
vote?
was requested.
based on priority. That's all,
Okay.
the only reason I'm saying that.
and we have to keep thinking about what is
I don't know
gonna
if I got it.
sell when we go out
Yeah.
to talking.
That's why I feel like the splash parks.
Did we do that right? Can you double check it?
The math gets weirdly complicated.
Sports field, put 5.
Well, we just heard you wrong. Sports.
Oh, got it. The next one down.
There.
I think, I don't
Yes, I don't
know.
understand.
So, and then do 6 for Virgil,
Yeah.
I think, and then go down to 7.
I don't know. What do people think?
Try again.
No, I can't help but think at the voting, at the polls, the senior center is gonna be something that attracts somebody for Metropolitan Park District. It's just my opinion.
It's a great point.
You think it will?
And again,
I think
this
it
is just a recommendation, you know.
Mhm, yeah.
I think that the pool and the senior center are both gonna be big draws for voters.
Mhm.
We still got all the other ones down below, right?
Won't do it for that.
Okay.
I think we're trying to leave.
Projects down below.
Okay. Are we good? Feeling comfortable?
When do we get
All
full?
the choices for Phil
Just quickly, do
sorry.
we wanna look at this one too? I think it's gonna be a little more, or a little less contested. But I know you felt good about this one initially.
Cause this will help us get that recommendation drafted, if we know where you're
We're going
at.
to meet on the 16th.
Yes.
We could just stay a few more minutes tonight. I'll take your whole meeting.
Okay.
So right now, we've identified these four for reserves, at least in this scenario. Are we still feeling okay about that now that we've gone in the weeds a little further?
I think we should use more reserve money for some of these smaller projects that could make a difference. And obviously, if the reserve money doesn't exist or whatever, city council can change that, but we could by recommending them, we're prioritizing them.
Remind me again though, how much do we usually leave in reserves? Did you speak to that, Troy?
I'm sorry, I was.
I think they've been dwindling is the reserves have been dwindling.
Right, I mean, they're one time in nature, so.
Yeah.
Is it reckless of us to spend all of that reserve?
Oh, yeah, you
I think so.
I don't know.
So I just wanted to remind, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but just remember that these ones are considered M and O as well. Can we see where we're at over on the right, the M and O?
Well, they wouldn't be, no, we don't have any NPD projects selected for M.
Not yet, but. Right, but how much is there, assuming the 50 cent rate for, it's, for M and O, like, cause remember, it's,
15 million.
yeah, so there's $15 million still left after the M and O was taken out for those ones that have M and O, right? Was that already considered?
Nope, so out of the projects that we have selected over here, which are a little arbitrary now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we're just gonna keep it at the top 5 for the sake of simplicity here. There you go. We have $2.3 million over the course of 5 years for the M&O for the top 5 projects that you selected that are new capital projects. So that, out of that 47-53 split that the work group kind of soft agreed on, we're looking at $13 million left for M&O over the course of those 5 years, which to Jen's point could include some of these M&O projects down here, or saving some aside for deferred maintenance and other needs that we've discussed.
Shouldn't we do the Huntingmore Park since that is such a high use and it's supposed to be the, you know,
MPD.
So MPD.
So that's the question, is maybe get the top 5 it down in this list as well.
Yeah.
And that will help
Okay.
further the conversation.
Well, maybe a little perspective on your replacement projects. The total is only 6.5 million.
So we could
You
do
had,
it.
I mean, you had 13 million. That
So
would
do them all.
So as long as we
Essentially, we're just
agree on
taking
the
some
priority of them,
Yeah.
then that would be reasonable for us to do that.
Great.
And then maybe bigger picture, something to think about is 50 cents the right.
Yeah.
Levy rate.
You said like
Kind of went in the middle.
39 last time you tried it, right? Was that, am I misremembering?
What was it?
47. 47, the last proposal was 47
And that's
cents.
one that did not pass, but it was close.
Close and
Well, and
There's a very
learn from it.
campaign, I mean, we didn't run a campaign like a campaign should be run, because we didn't have time.
we can learn from it.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't learn from it, it was the time, the lead time needs to be.
Which, yeah, we would learn to do it like a little more lead time, get it out there, yeah, yeah.
And now
So just
this-
pulling this back up for the sake of ease. So the numbers we've been looking at, to Troy's point, we're at that 50 cent.
If you put that back to 25 and change the one in green, that'll do everything.
Sorry for breaking your spreadsheet.
It's good. So you can change that one to 25, but if you want to change the green to 25, you can.
So the other issue is, do we want, what dollar amount? Do we want to recommend 50 cents? Do we want to recommend 35 cents? Do we want to recommend 60 cents? Correct?
6, so it's a savings from last time.
And then that would also then go in and affect what we just did on the top.
And so you would have to run another measure if you wanted to raise that, right?
Correct.
So
That becomes our
we
ceiling.
need to think about it Yeah.
So it's the balance of too high and we won't get it passed,
Right.
too low and we have to have it revoted to get more money.
And what do you think the community will?
Yeah,
Well-
and to my point that I made earlier, any amount is still more than we currently have.
Well, we need to get it approved though.
Sure. But I'm saying even if we did like, I don't know, let's say 20 cents, just go ridiculously low, because that's still more than we currently have for funding.
Right.
For sure.
So yeah, for a draft recommendation, is there,
We have a strong
do
consensus.
we have a strong, like a consensus from this group?
Cents seems really reasonable.
I agree with that.
75 is definitely too high,
Yeah.
because that would be, people would say it was more than 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
But
What was the number?
50,
Ah,
50 cents.
I agree, 50.
$600 a year.
Do you have a,
We
around
could get through
50?
all, we could do a lot of parks with that, but it's not. And if you own a $500,000 home, $250 a year should be within your budget, so.
Is it a year?
I would also like to point out though that since the last time this went through and didn't pass, but barely didn't pass, we've had a pandemic and inflation is currently affecting a lot of people. Our working class folks are definitely feeling the pressure. 250 doesn't sound like a lot to most people, but it could really make the difference for a lot of folks.
But then there's a trade-off of what they're gonna get. The public wants
Sure.
things and we can't pull the money out of the air.
100%.
If they want these
Um,
things, there's a cost. You've
Right,
gotta
you
live
have to pay for 'em.
live. And if that's kind of like a cost of doing business.
Sure, I would
Trust me, I've
posit
shopped on my stuff.
perhaps 40 cents seems like a reasonable compromise where it might be easier to sell for folks that are really feeling the pinch of the current economy, and still give us enough to work with where we get a significant budget to work with annually and over the cost of this plan. And then of course, there's still plenty of room to increase if necessary.
So at 50 cents, just to talk it through, we get 6.6 at 250 per resident.
Excuse me.
So at John's proposed 40 cents. So what, about 1.5 million less? Is that how that works? Thank you.
So what about
And then
45?
$50 cheaper per year per resident. Oh,
What's 45?
well, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Oh, we need to share screen. Sorry, guys.
45?
Yes. Oh, perfect.
That would have been helpful, John, sorry.
Sorry.
Where does 45 land?
And to the public as well. 45.
The last request was for 47.
Yeah.
So
47 cents then isn't necessarily 47 cents now.
It's a round
Right.
number, make it more voter friendly, I don't really know. Doesn't make any difference.
I don't think so.
I know 47, 40 is too low.
I'm sure there are, you know.
Sound more carefully calculated.
Yeah, maybe it feels more precise or
Well,
something.
maybe the amount we need.
It's more the writing and comprehension.
Can you
of
put
what
40
you're
cents in
gonna
there,
be
copy that amount into your worksheet, the fit 5.3, yeah.
Okay, so let's just,
Remember to stop sharing. Oh, does it live update?
And what.
we're gonna get the numbers updated on the other screen here and then
I just
reshare.
want to say 26 million or 13.
Is everyone, where's everyone standing? Numbers.
Okay, so at 40 cents,
Wait, what did you say? Who said what? 45, 47?
so this is just to go down the whole 10 cents. This is what 40 cents would give us over 5 years.
So what I wanted to see was if you do 40 cents, generates 5.3, 53% goes to capital, you have about 14 million, which is about $1 million short of your top 5, so it's close to your top 5 new
40
capital,
cents.
yeah.
It's 2 million short.
47.
40 cents, yeah.
And then you still have 12 million going to M&O. And you're only going to use 1.4. Oh no, 2.6 plus the 1.4, so you have 8 million left.
Have we overdone M and O, or do we have too high a percentage for M and O then, that?
Well,
We
it-
could
Maybe
keep
ever
a,
for maintenance and operations, I
could we
mean,
keep a lower percentage in the tax.
I kept hearing someone down here saying we need to maintain what we have. I couldn't remember. Was it you? Yeah, I mean,
But we did, so we just show we have an $8 million surplus on M and O with that
but
amount.
that's at 40 cents?
But you could certainly, you could knock off a few projects.
But
and
the,
then-
yeah, I was gonna say, you said that the M and O remainder could cover the whole bottom group down there.
Yeah, 6.5 is the bottom group, so you could do the majority of that, still have 2 million for the top. The actual M and O need for new projects wouldn't happen immediately. I mean, I think of M and O as flexibility. It allows us to do a lot of different things, whether if we need additional staff for our existing facilities, you have these repair and maintenance pieces too, so it gives us maximum flexibility. The higher that number is, the more flexibility we
Do you
have.
guys wanna go with like 40, tried the 47, which went through a couple years ago, or 45? Huh?
It didn't go through.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't go through. Do you wanna go back to that marker because of inflation and everything else that's happened from that last time? What's the general consensus here? You wanna do 40, 45, 47?
I think there's a strong conversation to be had to say, look at what Olympia and Tumwater have been able to do in leveraging their metro parks. And this is actually less than what we asked of you the last time, considering inflation, and like, let's do the thing and keep up with our peers.
So which,
I think 47, I don't know, like, as far as like a marketing standpoint, I think it would be like, it's not asking for more than before. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not voting.
45 to 47.
We heard 47 over here, heard 47.
I would suggest maybe then do like 45 or something. It could be perceived as less than the previous year, but I would also maybe change a little the balance of the M and O and.
Well, we gotta think about the house values too.
The house values are much higher. 45?
Can we put in 45? Do we have 45 in there to begin with?
We did 40. I wanted to see.
So if we do
I wanted to see what the low end did.
So if we do 45,
On the other spreadsheet?
Yeah. This is so cool, by the way.
What is Olympia and Tumwater?
Olympia is currently at 50 cents and Tumwater is at 33 cents per thousand.
so you'd be in the middle.
If people remember voting in 2018, it'd be
Well,
slightly
and he
less.
even,
For all of us new people that
Yeah.
are gonna vote.
So at 45,
So where we lost a lot
How much it
was
was,
northeast.
so just a
That's
reminder,
what's
at
been
40
the problem.
cents, you're about 2 million shy of
Going
your
over
top
there, right?
5
So we're good.
capital projects, whereas at 45, you're just under
Lots of prioritize some perks.
150,000.
did you guys see that? So from going from 40 to 45, instead of being
2 million.
2 million, we're about 158 short. Does that seem more palatable to everybody?
that's
And
small
what's
enough to
an
go
M&O?
with.
Reserves if they.
But so let's decide though on what rate. Are we comfortable with 45?
What's the M and O's? I just wanna know that. Well,
Which one?
M&O when it's at 45.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah.
It's these boxes here. So we haven't done a lot with M&O, so we talked about the hypothetical of filling all of these in within NPD.
Could you do that hypothetical for us
Yep.
and let's see where that goes?
Oh, look at that.
Crazy.
Million times.
Look
I
at the old
delete
school.
formulas a lot.
Okay.
So if we were to,
So there's still 5 million ready. And so we could convert some of that to new projects.
Couple new play structures.
So
45.
maybe a next consideration is that percentage split. One thing to think about, I know it's kind of been said, but this M&O is really like your savings account. Right, so there's a benefit to year over year not spending it down. Don't necessarily want too much money in there, but
What if you did, say, 40 to 60%? Just for letting us see what it looks like.
that gets us back up to 2 million and like excess here after those top 5. And then brings us down to 3.3.
there, that looks better. It's not in the red. Still a good amount of maintenance.
And it gives flexibility for coronary repairs or whatever it might come up.
Yeah, the
Like
stuff we haven't
funding for a
discovered.
draft
The play structures we don't know can't be prepared
For a
yet.
draft recommendation?
Yes.
Gives you time to think about it and
Yeah, no, we think
Continue to-
we're good on a draft recommendation. Okay. Thank you so much, Carter. And David, are we about ready to?
Do we need to vote on that? Sorry. Do
Nope.
you guys need to vote on no? Okay.
Yeah, just a recommendation. All right, so we're gonna officially end the meeting at 8:14. Thank you, everybody.
Go team.
That was a good one.
So proud of us.
A lot of work.
Bye,
guys.
I'm like, my mom.
And when I retired 13, 14 years ago,
Like watching the rain making up home.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you all.
isn't it? No,
guys.
yeah. Well, yeah, no problem. And it's crazy to think like the next couple of years, they'll, it's just the technology is moving so much faster.